Hello everyone, I know you watched this video to accompany you to sleep. So if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to tell me where you are from and what time you watched this video. Let's jump straight into the story. Story 1. 9-year-old Elizabeth Alton was the youngest of 3 children and lived with her mother Patty in St. Martin's, Missouri, a small rural town of just over 1,000 people. Elizabeth loved all things theater and performing, and had just been cast in the school play, which she was throwing herself into wholeheartedly. She was running through her lines every day with anyone that would read the other parts with her, practicing her songs and asking her siblings to act alongside her. She would find any excuse to dress up and sing along to Hannah Montana and Taylor Swift. Everyone said she was a very sweet, innocent, and kind-hearted girl, always so friendly and caring and looking out for everyone she knew. She and her mother Patty were especially close, loving to bake together and play puzzles and games. October 21st, 2009 was a typical Wednesday. Everybody was back from school, and the dinner was being cooked. One of Elizabeth's friends, Emma, knocked on Patty's door and asked if Elizabeth could go out and play with her. Patty at first said no because it was a school night and the family meal was almost ready, but after her daughter heard Emma at the door, both girls were relentless in trying to go out together, jumping up and down and begging for Patty to let them go. Emma lived just 4 houses away, and the pair and their other siblings were at each other's homes a lot. Patty told Elizabeth she had 1 hour and no more, and she wanted her home by 6:15 p.m. Elizabeth was still not home, and it was 15 minutes past the agreed time, which for a child as conscientious as Elizabeth was a reason to be concerned. The sun was setting and Patty said there was no way her daughter would still be out voluntarily, as she was terrified of the dark. Patty called her phone, but it went straight to voicemail. She then rang Emma's grandmother Karen, whom Emma and her siblings lived with. To her horror, Karen said she hadn't seen Elizabeth either, and she had no idea that Emma had even knocked at her door that afternoon. Patty hung up straight away and called the police. By 6:30 p.m., officers were at Patty's house and combing through the area. The street the family lived on was very close to about 60 acres of woodland, and this was a huge, yet overwhelming focus for the search teams. The police headed over to Emma's house, but they all maintained she hadn't been there. Karen and Gary, Emma's grandparents, were so upset they had no idea this had all happened, but they simply couldn't give any information that would help. All they could do was join in the search. Despite the fact their houses were connected by the street, which would have only taken a few minutes to walk, Emma said they had been walking through and around the woods, and had been darting in and out of the neighboring lawns and backyards. She said an hour later, the incredibly diligent Elizabeth set off home as instructed. Emma said she watched her walk off, and that was the last time she had seen her. Officers said they still couldn't see any evidence that pointed towards foul play or anything untoward, suggesting maybe she had become lost in the woods. To which Patty replied, "She's 9 years old, she wouldn't just walk off by herself." Soon almost a third of the whole town was out and looking. But the search party eventually had to slow down and stop for the night because of how dark it was. As soon as the sun rose, they were out in force again. A few hours later, with the concern continuing to mount, the FBI was called in to help. And they moved quickly. Truly is a family's worst nightmare. In this case, 9-year-old Elizabeth Alton from Cole County has been missing since yesterday evening. Good evening, I'm Angie Bailey. And I'm Ryan Takeo, and for Jim. Cole County authorities and volunteers have been searching for Elizabeth all day. Coma's Brooke Hash is at the scene. Brooke, is there anything new? Ryan, I can tell you that the number of volunteers and law enforcement across the state have tripled since last night to more than 300 people. They are covering a half-square-mile grid search near Elizabeth Alton's home. That is just behind me. She went missing last night around 6 p.m. on her way home from a friend's house just 4 blocks away. The search has not ended since then. There's no decision if or when it will end, and no Amber Alert has been issued. The terrain is rough, hilly, and includes fields, forests, and ponds. Well, I think that the woods possibility is, kids are necessarily playing in the woods, in those farm areas back there. Behind me here is the VFW. This is where authorities and volunteers have been coordinating the search all day. Now they're actually asking for no new volunteers. The outpour from the community has been outstanding. They just can't handle any more volunteers. Elizabeth reportedly had a cell phone on her when she disappeared. Officials hope they will be able to trace her location and are investigating her call history. Michael Ameni, Como 8 News, Cole County. Now if you have any information, of course, contact the Cole County Sheriff's Department. The number is 573-634-9160. Registered sex offenders in the area were all interviewed. Each car coming in and out was stopped and searched. Dive teams and helicopters were deployed, and sniffer dogs were brought in too. The team started looking at Elizabeth's phone activity and ordered the information from her cell phone provider. The data arrived quickly and showed that her phone was still on and was actually pinging near her home and in the woods. It was now 24 hours later. Painfully long amount of time when dealing with a missing child. There were no items of clothing found, no dropped phone, no clues at all. Unfortunately, when they were searching the location that linked to her phone battery suddenly went dead and the ping stopped. The forest was dense, dark, damp, and cold, and there was a huge amount of ground to cover. The more time that was passing, the less likely it was seeming that they were going to have a positive outcome in the search for Elizabeth. The sheriff says the search is focusing on a section of woods, which police have narrowed by triangulating Elizabeth's cell phone location. However, the battery has now died. Also, the search is being hampered by an uneven terrain, high brush, and soaking weather. I just want my little sister home safely. Right now, she's listed as an endangered missing person. Elizabeth's phone records also came back, and they were able to look at her last contacts and messages, as well as her mother, Patty, and several others that could be easily accounted for. She had received a call that afternoon from someone called Alyssa. 6-year-old Emma then asked to talk to the police again. She now had a new story, but seemed scared to tell the detectives. She said that her half-sister had been the one to get her to knock on Elizabeth's door that afternoon. Her half-sister was 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante. Emma said that when the two were outside playing together, Alyssa came and joined them, and encouraged Emma to leave them alone. But Elizabeth said she had to head home, and started walking off. This timed perfectly with the call that came from Alyssa. Emma walked back to her house, and stayed outside playing alone, leaving Elizabeth and Alyssa out together. A while later, Emma, who was now back in her garden, fell over and caught herself on some thorns. She called out for help. Alyssa heard her from her bedroom, and came outside. Emma said as she was helping her, she noticed something that looked like blood on Alyssa's clothes. Detectives asked Alyssa a few routine questions, and despite the fact she seemed open and forthcoming, something about what Emma had told them wasn't sitting right. If what Emma was saying was true, it meant that she hadn't been the last person to see Elizabeth that day. As far as they now knew, it was actually 15-year-old Alyssa Bustamante. It was now 48 hours later, and the investigating team had to regroup. It was now glaringly obvious that Elizabeth had not run away. She had either been led somewhere or forced somewhere, and officers started looking closer to home. As they began doing rounds of the houses again, a search party inside the woods made a strange discovery. A group of volunteers had stumbled upon a huge hole that had been dug up, then covered back over. They alerted police right away, but there was nothing under the soil. There was still no sign of Elizabeth or anything belonging to her in that area. When detectives had been at the Bustamante house talking to Emma and Alyssa, they had noticed several holes in the garden that looked similar in size and shape to this one. Given this, a warrant was issued to properly and intensely search the home. Although Elizabeth definitely hadn't been there that day, she would often go over and play, so they needed to take a good look around. Everything seemed normal and in order until they entered Alyssa's room. It painted a very troubling and chilling picture. Everything was everywhere, and there was writing all over the walls, some parts in blood. There was also a drawing of an outline of a person with the name Emma next to it, her 6-year-old sister. Cards from her father, who was in prison, were scattered around the room, and buried under everything, detectives found Alyssa's diary. One entry read, "If I don't talk about it, I bottle it up, and when I explode, someone's gonna die." They also noticed a paragraph that was scribbled over in blue pen. Fortunately, investigators were able to uncover some of the original writing by shining a light on the back of the paper. 2 words stood out, slit in throat. Despite Alyssa saying she had been at school that day, it would turn out she had actually skipped lessons, and her whereabouts around the time Elizabeth was last seen, as Emma was saying goodbye to her, weren't able to be confirmed by anyone either. Things were slowly being pieced together, but there were still so many gaps. Alyssa's diary was seized by the FBI and handed over to Sergeant David Rice, who was now preparing to interview the team. Born in 1994, Alyssa came from a troubled and very broken family. Both her parents had substance addictions, Her father was in and out of prison, and her mother would often leave the family home on drugs binges. Eventually, Alyssa and her siblings went to live with her grandparents, Karen and Gary, who soon gained full custody of them. Karen said she adored Alyssa, and although the children had had a tough life, she did her best to raise them well, shower them with love and care, and be a constant and supportive presence in their lives. As she entered her teenage years, Alyssa started self-harming and expressing suicidal feelings. She was admitted into a psychiatric hospital after she overdosed and began to cut words into her arms. Doctors that assessed her described her as violent and angry. She was diagnosed with severe depression and prescribed antidepressants. When she was released, things only began to get worse and more concerning. On her various social media platforms, she changed her list of hobbies to killing people and cutting. She often told friends and her boyfriend she wanted to know what it was like to kill someone, and had a dream of burning down a house with a family inside. Her Twitter feed talked about a hatred of authority and people telling her what to do. One of her posts read, she also posted a video to her YouTube channel called The Video, showed her trying to get her two brothers to touch a fence that she knew would electrocute them. A disturbing pattern of behavior was clear to see, and the more the FBI looked into her background, the more they found pointed towards her being a dangerous individual that wanted to inflict pain on people in the worst ways imaginable. After going through her diary some more, Sergeant Reist asked Alyssa to come in for a formal interview alongside her grandmother and a juvenile officer. He said as the interview progressed, his tactic was to ask a question and sit in silence for as long as possible, sometimes for up to a minute at a time. He said as uncomfortable as it was, he knew the team would break eventually if there was something to say, which he was certain there was. He needed to know what had happened to Elizabeth that day, and he wasn't going to stop until he got to the truth. Alyssa started off by recounting her day. She said she had come back from school at around 3:30, and then had gone for a walk in the forest at around 4:30, 5 p.m. They now knew she was never at school that day, so she was already trapping herself in lies. She said she was supposed to take Emma on a walk with her, but ditched her as she was annoying, and instead went walking alone. She claimed she had come back about an hour later and was up in her room when she heard Emma shouting for help from outside. Sergeant Reist got her to retrace her steps with a map he had printed out. "Do you want me to draw this for you? I have a map. Now the thing about this map, I don't think it has where your actual house is, so the way I understand it, the new house would be right back here. Is that right? Okay, let's say the new house is ballpark here. I'm not exactly sure how far back it goes. It's like past all the clearings, and then when it starts to get to a smaller trail. So how long, when you got home about 3:30, how long were you at home messing around before you went on your walk?" "I was home at least an hour. So about 4:30 or 5:00. "Right. Well, I believe that this little line here is the trail or something. Did you go out all this way over here? And then where'd you go from here?" "I just kept following the path." "Where does it go from here?" Show me what? Does it loop back around?" "No, it doesn't loop. It like goes this way, I think." "Okay, and then what did you do?" "And then there was a pasture. I just hung out at the creek." "And then what did you do?" "I came back." "Then you walked back?" "Yes." "And then what did you do?" "I went home." "It takes about..." "How long were you on your walk?" "It's about an hour." "Walk?" "It's about 15 or 20 minutes." "So you were gone about an hour." Alyssa said after this, everybody went to church and got home at around 8 p.m. Rice then changed the line of questioning and moved on to the holes around her garden and around the woods. Alyssa calmly admitted to having dug them herself, but said it was because she liked digging holes and sometimes buried dead animals in them. "Well, there were some folks out there, out in the forest, digging some holes or looking at some holes. And I guess they had said that you like to go out there and dig holes. So I'm going to have to ask you some stuff about yourself. Tell me about these holes you dig." "Well, you dig them a certain way. Just wherever they're at." "I mean, you dig a certain spot or what?" "Well, and you can understand why, as if people were out in the woods looking for a person if they were lost, or God forbid, looking for if they thought it was God forbid, a body." "Have you dug a hole like this before then, or is this the first time?" "It's not completely like this, but it's kind of like that. We dig it up for a shoebox." "Okay, but this is the first time of that size." "Okay, but what about the big round ones that I keep falling in on? I mean, they're deep. I always get told, did you guys quit doing this because they're dangerous? And we used to ride our horses up there. I mean, they're huge. Okay, there's like 3 or 4 of them. Yeah. He then said, "What kind of person do you think would do this to a 9-year-old girl?" Alyssa shrugged and said, "I don't know, a sick person, someone that can put down all their morals." She was still maintaining that she had never been out with Elizabeth on her own. It was always in a group of siblings, and she had been trying her best to help find her as well. What to know about this whole investigation on this? She's still missing. They're out looking for her. They don't let them off here. This is really big. They've had helicopters searching as well. And that's pretty much what I know. I really don't think she would run away because she's 9. I think that maybe someone kidnapped her or something. It's a terrible thing. I don't know what else to assume. Is there anybody in that area you can think of that comes to mind, that you would think of that would do that? Is there anybody that, knowing your neighbors, that you would? No. After this, he started asking questions about Elizabeth's phone, explaining that the data did not lie, and it was indicating that her phone was somewhere behind Alyssa's house, which he showed her on a map. He then moved on to Alyssa's house and her bedroom. Now, it's my understanding that the FBI do a search or something of the house where you guys lived. Tell me about that. What was that all about? You said they searched your room. Yes. Other than marijuana seats and that sort of stuff, did they find anything? Nope. Okay, did they take anything? They took my sheet and the pillowcase, I think. Did they take anything else? I don't think so. I haven't really surveyed anything. Okay. I think they took clothes. No, they took everything else. And a diary. I mean, they gave us the list. It's not all coming to me what was on the list, but there was a long list. Your diary. Okay. You ever gone through the diary? I've looked at some of it, yes. Okay. Did you know that? No. Does it make you angry? I don't know. It's kind of your private, personal thoughts, isn't it? When Rice confronted her about the entries, including the one that had been scribbled over, the interview would take a drastic turn. We talked a little bit earlier about technology. Even if you write something down, and then you take a pen and try real hard to scratch it out, that doesn't make it go away. It's still there. What we want to do is find out what happened through her. I need to know what the truth is. We have your diary. We read your diary, including the last entry. Where is she at? I don't know. You need to tell us the truth. You need to tell us what happened. If this was an accident, that's fine. We can deal with that. This family needs closure. Okay, let's start at the beginning. Is this something that was planned out, or was this just an accident? We just mentioned her death. She's old. She died. I didn't know what to do. I burned her body. Who helped you? Nobody. We're in the forest. At the creek bed. At the creek bed? Okay. Alyssa said the pair had been playing out in the forest, and Elizabeth had fallen, hit her head and died instantly. Panicked, she had tried to conceal her body by burning it. But, given the final entry in her diary, Rice knew this wasn't true. But it was the start of the truth coming out. He just had to keep chipping away, and poking holes in her stories. The entry in her diary that had been scribbled over had now been completely uncovered, and it read as follows. I just fucking killed someone. I strangled them and slit their throats and stabbed them. Now they're dead. I don't know how to feel at the moment. It was amazing. As soon as you get over the, oh my god, I can't do this feeling, it's pretty enjoyable. I'm kinda nervous and shaky though right now. Okay, I gotta go to church now. LOL. It had been written on the same day Elizabeth had gone missing, October 21st. Rice told her they would find Elizabeth's body eventually, and when they did, an autopsy would tell them the full story. I understand you said she fell, and that's why she died. However, they will know from the autopsy if she was shot, if she was hit in the head, if her throat was cut. How did she die? 9-year-old girls don't just die. Was her throat cut? Yeah. Oh, and is it true you said then you burned her body? Okay, is that part true? So is her body, should it still be there? Into the creek, yes. A creek full of water? Yes. Alyssa told Rice that she had bumped into Elizabeth and Emma outside, and once Emma had gone, everything started to unravel. Despite her denials it was pre-planned. She was already armed with a kitchen knife. Holding the 9-year-old's hand, the pair walked for 15 minutes, deep into the forest. With Alyssa telling her she had something to show her, they just had to walk further in. Once they reached a certain spot, Alyssa said she'd beat and strangled her, before slitting her throat and stabbing her repeatedly. The fear that Elizabeth must have felt as the forest got darker, and she realized her life was in danger, is unimaginable. Alyssa then said she had attempted to burn her body, before digging a hole to bury her, and disposing of everything else in the creek. However, Rice knew that the hole had not been dug on that day. It had been dug days before, as were all the other holes they had found. She didn't go out there with a shovel, or anything she could have used to do this. And there was no way she could have killed Elizabeth, dug a hole to bury her, and been back home within the hour to go to church. If Rice could get her to admit to pre-digging the hole, it would help to prove premeditation. Everybody still found it hard to believe that Alyssa had managed to do this all by herself. But she swore it was just her, and she was the only one that knew about it. Alyssa Bustamante agreed to take Rice to her remains. And with this, just 15 minutes from her home, the search for Elizabeth Alton came to a devastating end. A day after Elizabeth was found, police announced that they had placed the 15-year-old under arrest, and she had been charged with first-degree murder. The neighborhood was horrified. Court officials confirmed today they are seeking a petition of first-degree murder against a 15-year-old suspect for the killing of 9-year-old Elizabeth Alton. The case now centers on letting the court decide if the suspect should stay in trial as an adult. That starts with a closed detention hearing tomorrow. After the detention hearing, the court will hold a certification hearing November 18th to determine whether or not to try the suspect as an adult. Among factors the court will consider are whether a history of violence is present, as well as the suspect's age, maturity, and sophistication. Now there's only about 6 houses on the entire street. It's a very small community, so even though officials won't release the identity of the person being held for the killing, many people have already figured it out. Until after the certification hearing that you not release the identity of that individual. That's what we're asking at this point. Police had also interviewed Alyssa's boyfriend and asked him to undertake a polygraph test. We know a lot more stuff than we're leading on to believe. We've talked to several people. So what do you know? Why is a polygraph telling me different? Why is your body telling me different? Although they suspected he likely knew something had happened, they determined he didn't have anything to do with the murder of Elizabeth. And he was never implicated in anything, other than the fact she had just wanted to know what it was like to kill someone. Given her diary entry, there was no other explanation. She had dug 2 graves in the weeks before, and essentially waited for an opportunity. It remains undetermined who, if anyone, the second grave was intended for. But police suspected she was actually planning to kill her 2 younger brothers. On October 28th, a week after she had gone missing, 9-year-old Elizabeth Alton was laid to rest. Her favorite color was pink, and her funeral was filled with the color. A horse-drawn carriage carried her pink and white casket. The community was a close one, and it was packed with people standing along the sides and waiting outside. The emergency responders and investigators were also sat in the first several rows. The case had deeply affected and moved everybody. I hope justice is served. I really do. Because it's not right. She was innocent. She didn't do nothing. She deserved to be killed the way she was killed. She didn't have a chance at life. It was all hugs and, holding each other and stuff like that. It was harder to leave than it was to get there. Like I said, she was my bug. She was my heart. I bought a house out in Russellville. The whole room was pink. It was all Barbie and everything. She was outgoing. She was active. Loved riding her bike. I have her picture on my wall. Every time I look up at it, I want to cry. I get mad. I get angry. I feel sorry. Every night I tell her I love her, and I'm sorry I wasn't there to protect her. Every single night. I just wish that it never happened. People who don't know you may see you on camera and think, you know what, he's behind bars. Why should I feel sorry for this guy? Don't feel sorry for me. Feel sorry for my daughter. Feel sorry for her siblings. Feel sorry for the world, because they're missing out on a beautiful child. I have my guilt. I've done wrong. I wouldn't be here otherwise. I should have been out there protecting my daughter. I should be out there every day protecting my family. If I could, I'd go back and do that. In November 2009, despite her lawyers pushing for her to get a lesser charge on the grounds of a troubled childhood and her age, a 15-year-old girl from Jefferson City area will be tried as an adult for first-degree murder charges. Alyssa Bustamante is accused of. The judge ruled that Alyssa Bustamante would be tried as an adult, and she was therefore indicted. She entered a plea of not guilty, and trial preparation got underway. Just as Elizabeth's family and the prosecution thought they were finally getting somewhere, a huge blow came. In June 2011, her defense team requested that her lengthy confession to Sergeant Rice was thrown out. A judge ruled that because of her age and the line of questioning put forward by the juvenile officer working alongside Rice, at least part of her statement would not be admissible in court. After this, Her trial was delayed and set for early 2012. The prosecution knew they were really up against it, and after going back and forth, thinking of the best approach, they decided to offer the option of a plea deal to Alyssa. Second-degree murder instead of first-degree murder. With this, Alyssa Bustamante withdrew her not guilty plea for first-degree murder and pleaded guilty to second-degree murder instead. This also spared her the chances of receiving the death penalty. The courtroom was packed, and everybody wanted to know what would happen. As part of the deal, Alyssa had to recount what had happened that day. As she went through what she had done in all its awful detail, reporters in the court said the tension was palpable with everybody sitting in stunned silence. Her defense team also spoke and leaned heavily on her childhood and upbringing, mental health issues, and claiming that her prescribed medication made her more prone to violence. Despite all of this, Alyssa Bustamante was sentenced to life in prison for second-degree murder and 30 years for armed criminal action, and the sentences were to be served consecutively. Several months after she pleaded guilty, however, the United States Supreme Court ruled that juveniles cannot face automatic life sentences without the possibility of parole. So under Missouri's law, Alyssa may seek parole after 30 years. Patty gave a speech at her sentencing. She was so upset and physically shaking, the judge eventually asked her to stop talking. All Alyssa could say in response was, "I cannot even understand what you guys are going through," adding that she would give her life to bring Elizabeth back. A detective said it was in this moment. Karen and Gary got up and walked out of the courtroom, and everybody could see Alyssa suddenly realize that the only two people that had stuck by her and tried to be a constant in her life had just walked away. Patty said that everything that came out of Alyssa's mouth was a lie. She had no remorse, and she was being told what to say by her lawyers. The prosecutor, Mark Richardson, said he had never seen anything like this in his life, and he hoped to never have to try a case like it again. The motive has to be the most senseless, reprehensible that could be in humankind, and that is to take a life for a thrill, he said. A forensic psychologist added it was clear from her patterns of behavior over the years. It was only a matter of time before she killed somebody. Patty went on to sue not only Alyssa, but the hospital where Alyssa sought treatment. She believes that the healthcare system should have seen the red flags and taken preventative measures. A judge threw out the lawsuit against the hospital, but the lawsuit against Alyssa was successful, and she will ultimately owe Patty $5 million. Alyssa appealed her sentence in 2014, but this was denied. The events that transpired so very quickly on October 21st, 2009 rocked the town and shattered the closeness of the community. Patty said she misses her daughter's kindness and her ability to see the good in everyone and everything. A friendly and innocent young girl excited for her starring role in the school play, just playing with her friends and siblings, enjoying the simple pleasures that childhood brings. Her life was snatched away in the most frightening way imaginable, and the damage done to so many people on that day will forever be felt. Story 2. Now the question remains, where is Dulce? It is one of the biggest mysteries in recent years. Is there anything you'd like your daughter to know wherever she is? We miss her. We're not going to give up on finding her, and we want her to come back. I can't find my daughter. Okay, what was the last time you seen her? We were here at the park, and people said that probably somebody took her. Okay, how old is she? She's 5 years old. Okay, and what park are you at? Here in Bridgeton Park. Okay, where at in the Bridgeton Park are you? The one with the basketball court where high school is. Okay, so you're at the basketball courts behind the high school? Yes. Okay, and what was she seen last wearing? She was wearing, give me a second. I don't remember what clothes she was wearing, but she was wearing, I just remember her pants. She was wearing like a flowery pants and some heels, some white heels. The caller is 19-year-old Noma Olives Perez. Her 5-year-old daughter Dulce has vanished from a park. As police quickly descended on the scene, it would set in motion an investigation into one of the most baffling missing child cases. Dulce Maria Olives had been born in April 2014. Her mother Noma was very young when she was born, just 14 years old, so Dulce would be looked after by Noma's mother Norma, who would eventually become Dulce's legal guardian. She was part of a close family, but her father, Edgar Perez, would later be deported to Mexico in 2018. Her mother said Dulce had a spunky but sweet personality, always giving hugs and kisses. She was a loving child who adored the Disney film Frozen and pretending to be a princess. Noma would go on to have another child, a little boy called Manny. Then in 2019, she was pregnant with her third. On September 16, 2019, Noma was waiting at her mother's house, as her daughter and younger sister would get off the school bus at the same time. Dulce had only just started kindergarten and was settling into a new routine. When they got off the bus, Dulce, Noma's 3-year-old son Manny, and her younger sister decided to go to Bridgerton City Park. Before getting there, at around 4 p.m., they stopped in a gas station to get some ice cream. CCTV showed the family in the store. Dulce was seen wearing white trousers with butterflies and flowers on them, white sandals, and a yellow shirt with a koala on it. They then drove 5 minutes to Bridgerton City Park. After pulling into a parking space beside the basketball courts, Dulce and Manny got out and ran over towards the playground to go on the swings, roughly 30 yards away. Noma, who was 5 months pregnant, would normally take the family dog too and go to the playground with her children. But on this occasion, she did not. She stayed in the car with her younger sister, who was doing her homework, and scratched a lottery ticket. Although they could see the park, the swings were obscured by a hill. The fact as to exactly what happened next is unclear, as it was reported that at around 4:20 p.m., Manny ran back to the car without his sister. But Noma would later say he had not ran back to the car. She said they could no longer see Manny or Dulce from the vehicle, so she and her younger sister got out of the car and went to go and look. She said they had found Manny crying with his ice cream on the floor. She asked him where his sister was, and he pointed to the buildings by the park. Initially believing she was playing hide and seek, Noma went looking, but there was no sign of her daughter. Before calling 911, Noma called her brother who lived close by and asked him to come out with the dog to see if they could find her, but there was still no sign of Dulce. She asked the children on the basketball courts if they had seen her, and she said that one of them had told her they had seen Dulce running towards the buildings and an African-American man walking near the buildings at that time. This differed from what another girl at the basketball courts had said. She said she had seen what appeared to be a red van and a Hispanic man nearby. Noma said that she had seen 2 children in the park, alongside the children who were playing basketball. I saw 2 kids the same age as my daughter and son coming out. They were holding hands, but I didn't see no grown-up with them. They just went around the park. And then I saw the girls at the basketball court, and that's it. She then called the police. We were in the car. She came down with my son. They were running to the park, and then me and my sister came down. When we got here at the park, she wasn't here. They said that my son was just crying with ice cream. They said that somebody threw his ice cream on the floor, and my daughter just ran away. You didn't see anyone else around there that she could possibly have went with? No, not that I know of. There's just some other people that are here that said that they saw her running through some houses in the back. And they said that they saw 2 men. They saw a black guy, and they saw a Mexican man with 2 kids, who's saying that they saw them. There's people here in the basketball court that they saw her. They said that they saw her running. What color top does she have on? I don't remember. Are you at the basketball court? Yes, I'm right here right now. Do you have your son with you? No, I have my son with me. He was crying when we found him. He was just standing there crying. He was standing there crying. You said that the black males took his ice cream? No, they threw it on the floor. 2 males took his ice cream and threw it on the floor. And then they left with your daughter? Probably because I didn't saw it. When we came and looked for her, we were looking everywhere for her, and we couldn't find her. She said that her son was at the basketball court with her daughter, that there was 2 black males that took her son's ice cream and threw it on the ground and left with her daughter. Are you on Mayor Aiken? I already have an officer here. Okay. All right, go speak with the police, ma'am, okay? Within minutes, the police had arrived on scene. Dog handlers were also there to assist in the search with bloodhounds, and they scoured through the park in wooded areas, hoping that maybe the little girl had just wandered off or become lost. The task in front of them was huge. Bridgerton City Park sits on roughly 1,000 acres of land in Cumberland County and was just behind Bridgerton High School. In the time frame of Dulce's disappearance, Bridgerton Police Chief Michael Gamari Sr. said that around 400 vehicles had been close to or around the park during that time. There were no CCTV cameras in the playground, but the police chief said other videos had confirmed she was in the park. As it had been around 45 minutes from her going missing to the police being called, he said the scope of the investigation had widened. The FBI Child Abduction Division were also brought on board to assist local law enforcement in the investigation. The community response was huge. Volunteers from the local community used their knowledge of the area to assist in the search for the missing child. The park had not been immediately closed off, and the locals soon descended to try and help. If she had been abducted, and the abductor had walked to the playground to get her, there was a possibility of footprints being left. But when people began arriving at the park to look for her, any potential footprints could have been compromised or destroyed, as would any potential tire tracks. The following day, September 17th, the police described a van they were looking for, a red vehicle with sliding doors and tinted windows. The description of the van had come from a child, meaning there was a potential for the description to not be accurate. It had now been roughly 28 hours since Dulce had last been seen, and at 10 p.m. that night, an Amber Alert was issued. An Amber Alert is issued when a child is suspected to have been abducted. It circulates a name and description of the child in question, and any details about the potential abductor. A 5-year-old was abducted based on information they have received. Complete strangers from the area are consumed by the long, agonizing search for the child. I feel as if it were my own family, because we all have children, and we don't want anything like this to happen. It's something really ugly. This makes me sick. My stomach's in knots right now, and I'm just praying for the safe return of this child. Coming true for a mother in South Jersey after her daughter disappears from a park. And police have now issued an Amber Alert for 5-year-old Dulce Maria Alves. Police tell Eyewitness News that this Amber Alert was issued yesterday late in the evening after investigators interviewed and re-interviewed a number of people who were out here at this Bridgerton Park on Monday afternoon around the time that this child disappeared. And now they do believe the little girl was abducted, taken by a man in a red van. We do have a description of that suspect, but first, Eyewitness News was also able to speak with this child's mother, who is pleading for her daughter's safe return. Take a listen. I just want to find her. I want to find her, that she's okay. Nothing bad's happened to her. Investigators say the suspect lured Dulce away from the playground and into his red van. They say Dulce was seated in the back seat and then driven away. Her disappearance, of course, has sparked an all-out search 2 days and 2 nights, and now into the 3rd day, this community is doing its part to help, too. Former FBI Special Agent J.J. Claver said it would have been better to have the Amber Alert go out within hours of Dulce going missing, and not the following day, as the park was popular with people, and was a place where people would go jogging and work out. The FBI believed that her abductor was likely familiar with the area and knew it well enough to avoid being seen. FBI Special Agent Daniel Garabint said, "The person that did this likely lived in Bridgerton, been familiar with Bridgerton, or had a reason to be where they were in that park." He added, "We believe there are witnesses out there who saw the abductor, who saw the vehicle in the area of the park, and either haven't come forward because they're afraid to come forward or haven't come forward because they don't realize how important the information is that they have." One problem faced by detectives straight away was the amount of rumors circulating on social media. There are plenty of rumors swirling around on social media, many of which have gotten back to the little girl's pained family members. We spoke to Dulce's aunt, neighbor Alves, who says the family is not only struggling to stay strong while they search, she feels the need to defend her sister, Dulce's mom. There's things going on social, saying that she had to do something with it. I think they're not cops for them to say things like that. They can't judge other people. Police say they've been in constant contact with Dulce's mother, Noma, and will conduct follow-up interviews with more family members. But they're also reading those online posts as well. Everything plays a role in it. Every comment is investigated. And of course, police continue their investigation to find this 5-year-old little girl, the Alves family, also doing their part. They are pooling their money together tonight to hopefully offer a reward for any information they may lead to Dulce's safe return. We're live in Bridgeton, New Jersey, Maggie Kent, Channel 6. Various online groups were started to circulate news and information about her case. People would join searches and go live on Facebook to bring awareness to the search efforts. On September 18th, a vigil was held as the community came together to try and help. As day turned to dusk in Bridgeton, hundreds from the community gathered in a show of support in the search for Dulce Maria Alves. Family, including Dulce's mother, law enforcement, and complete strangers in yellow. The color of the shirt Dulce was last seen wearing in the park where she was last seen 5 days ago. Dulce's uncle speaking with Action News after the vigil. "At home, there is an emptiness since she hasn't come back," he said. "Since he doesn't speak English, we've translated his plea to the community. She hasn't hurt anyone. She's only an innocent child who likes to have fun and play games. We don't know why she's disappeared," he said. Dulce's grandmother also sharing a few words through tears. I beg you, if you know something, please call police because the truth is the people that have a little girl don't know what you're causing us. I don't understand what's going on, she told me. When we asked her how Dulce's mother is doing, she stopped answering questions. I can't speak. I'm sorry, she said. The hope is that Dulce will be found soon. Fight. Fight your way home. We want her, the little girl, to return home safe and sound. Please, please, her uncle said. And what you're seeing are some of the candles left over from tonight's vigil. Many members of this community, again, praying for her safe return home. An amber alert does remain in effect. Now, we should note that Dulce's mother did not speak at tonight's vigil. She was escorted by law enforcement, and a reward for information leading to Dulce's return has grown to $35,000. Within the first few days of the search, dive teams were deployed to search the various bodies of water around the area. The search was expanded on land and from the air to try and generate any new leads. Bloodhounds were being used to try and find any scent of her. They were able to pick something up for roughly an hour before they lost the scent. The search for 5-year-old Dulce Alaves intensified Saturday as 3 witnesses emerged from vehicles, one after another, 2 females and a young boy. Investigators returned with them to the spot where the little girl was last seen alive. Dulce's 3-year-old brother Manny, who had most likely witnessed whatever had happened, did not speak very much. The FBI had taken him back there in an attempt to find out exactly what it was he had seen. But this went nowhere. Police said again that Dulce's family were being very cooperative with the investigation efforts, and her grandmother was out putting flyers up. More than 300 officers were drafted in for the search, and sex offenders in the area were also tracked down to account for their whereabouts too. More than 500 vehicles had been checked, and more than 200 locations had also been searched. Rumors began to circulate that Dulce's mother had been arrested, but this was false. And at a press conference, the police chief spoke about the need to stick to the facts. I do want to say that I saw some of you sent me information, and it was discovered that it had been reported that there was an arrest made, that the victim's mother was arrested. That's totally erroneous. In fact, that in and of itself is being investigated as well. I'd like to caution you on jumping to conclusions or publishing anything. I think myself and the prosecutor have been pretty open, even when you text, about providing as much information as we can. We do not have any strong suspects at this time, and we're doing a lot of interviews. I'd say as of this morning, probably 70 to 75 interviews done. Those in the community were living in fear that this could happen again. One resident said, "Everybody is worried about their own family. It's pretty scary." And another said, "It's not the same aside from being here. We are with our kids, but at all times we are looking to make sure they don't get away from us, or looking to see if we see anything strange." It had now been a week, and police issued an appeal for anyone who was in the park that day, and who may have taken photos or videos to come forward, as they may have inadvertently caught something of significance. A big problem being faced by the authorities was that some in the community feared if they came forward with information, it could affect their immigration status. Bridgerton has a sizable population of undocumented immigrants. Investigators have made assurances no one coming forward with information will be asked about their immigration status. Still, some immigrants are afraid to come forward. Katia Ramirez works with migrants, and she explains. They're afraid that somehow it's going to be a trap. I mean, the police chief has stated that they're not in collaboration with ICE. They've expressed that, but it's really hard to get that into people's minds. It's a matter of trust. On Tuesday, September 24th, the police announced that, via telephone, they had successfully made contact with Dulce's father, who lived in Mexico, hoping to see if he could shed any light on why his daughter would be abducted. 2 weeks after her disappearance, Dulce's mother gave a press conference. Today marks 2 weeks since the monster that took my daughter. On that day, my life changed for the worse. I have not been the same ever since. People are saying I have something to do with it. This and saying bad things about me. Please stop the rumors. Please stop pointing fingers when you don't know. And we don't know who took her. I want to thank the law enforcement for searching and investigating, all the media for covering my daughter's case since day one. Also, everybody that has taken time out of their schedule to go out and look for her. All the prayers for my family and I, we all greatly appreciate it all. I beg you all, please don't give up on my Dulce. Let's keep pushing to find her safe. Please continue to pass along her pictures on social media and passing out flyers. Don't be afraid to call any tips. If you were here in the park that day, Please double check your phone for pictures, and any little bit may help. How are you? Worrying about my daughter? Can you share with us if you reflected on what you might have done differently that Monday afternoon? How? Would you have done anything differently that day? I just don't be going out that much. So now I'm scared. I'm scared of going out now because of people saying things and rumors. What do you think happened to your daughter? I'm not sure. The subject of what her son Manny had seen when Dulce went missing also came up. Can you share with us what your son said to you when he ran back to the car? He didn't run back to the car. He was just standing there crying. And what did he say? He doesn't talk. He doesn't talk. No. So he was crying. He was just crying when I went up to him and I asked him, "Where's your sister?" He just pointed behind the buildings that day because he can't speak still. And did he still have his ice cream? No, his ice cream was already in the door. And tell us about your daughter's ice cream. What did she get? Coconut in a cup. In a cup. It was like a water ice coconut. And you said earlier they didn't find that? No, they didn't find the cup of the ice cream, or either the spoon. She laughed. Whoever took her, she took the ice cream. Yeah. Noma was also asked about the rumors that had been circulating regarding the circumstances of her daughter's disappearance, and how the finger had been pointed at her. Your response to how this community has pointed fingers at your family, and suggests that you know what happened. Do you know what happened? No. I don't know what happened. And what do you say to the people who are making comments, and are pulling your parenting into questioning? Well, they're just judging me because of what I did in my past. That doesn't mean that from my past I'm doing the same thing. Like I told them, since I found out I was pregnant, I got far away from my friends. I started spending more time with my kids. As my daughter always used to call me, saying that she always wanted to see me. She always used to FaceTime me, or video call me on Messenger, and tell me she wanted to see me. Sometimes at night, like at 8 or 10, she's like, "Come and get me." She would start crying like, "Come and get me, I don't want to be here." Is there something in your past that you regret? No. Some people still continued to not buy what Noma was saying, but she hit back at these claims. That really affected me when I saw all the comments saying I sold her, I killed her, that I know where she is. That really affected me. I've seen a lot of cases where mothers do that to their kids, but I love my daughter a lot, and she knows that. Some questioned her apparently calm demeanor, but Noma explained that she did not cry in front of people, not even her parents. Noma's phone was also taken away several times by the authorities, that they could check through it for any relevant information. By early October, the reward for information was standing at $40,000. Noma and her mother gave an interview to NJ.com, where Noma said that the police had told her they weren't going to give up on her daughter's case. She also spoke about the impact that this had had on her son Manny, saying that he had changed since his sister had gone missing. She said he had become more aggressive with other children and stopped listening, adding that he wasn't like that before. She and her mother said they wanted people to continue to look for Dulce, with Noma even speaking about hiring a private detective. But they were unable to, due to the money it would cost. Noma also said she wanted other states to join in the search for Dulce, but didn't know how to go about getting them involved. Noma explained that she was trying her best to be strong for her children. Authorities had appeared to rule out the involvement of Dulce's father Edgar, saying that the FBI had spoken to him. On October 15th, a police sketch was issued of someone they wanted to talk to. He was described and drawn as follows. A slender male, possibly Hispanic, standing at between 5 feet 6 inches and 5 feet 8 inches, roughly 30 to 35 years old, with acne on his face. He was seen wearing a black shirt, orange sneakers, red trousers, and a baseball cap. Police Chief Gamari said that some people who bore a resemblance to the sketch had been brought in and questioned, but were subsequently released. The public were asked to be aware of any people who maybe had failed to turn up for work in the days surrounding her going missing, or anybody who had changed their vehicle or appearance since then. Cumberland County Prosecutor Jennifer Webb McCrae urged people to be aware of any sudden children in families, saying, "If you know a family that didn't have a child, pops up with a child that's in the 5-6 years old range, and that seems suspicious to you, then I'd ask you to contact our FBI, or our tip line, or Bridgerton Police, and get us that information." The response from across the country had been huge. Police Chief Gamari said, "The country is on alert. I can't even tell you that there's a state we haven't received a tip from." The case would reach an even larger audience when it was featured on the TV show Dr. Phil in December 2019. When Dr. Phil interviewed Noma, he asked her if she thought Dulce may have known whoever had taken her, but she said she was unsure. He continued to press her on who might be responsible. She then mentioned an old friend who had confronted her several times prior to her daughter going missing. She said last time he saw me and my daughter together, and he just waved at me and said hi, and he asked me if that was my daughter, and I said yes. She said that he had tried to date her several times, but she had rejected his advances. Noma would also tell Action News that the person in question was one of the last people to see her daughter, but she added that she did not suspect he was involved. She said she was only answering Dr. Phil's questions, and that was why she had mentioned him. She also said during the interview that she had taken a polygraph after being asked to by the police, but they hadn't given her the results of the test. Although her demeanor on the show did strike many as very calm, and maybe even a bit odd, Dr. Phil did note that her first language is Spanish, and when she made an appeal to her daughter in her native tongue, the emotion was much more apparent. She said in the interview that she felt like she had failed her daughter, and that if she was found, she would apologize to her. Jackie Rodriguez had been the spokesperson for the family, and although she no longer is, she appeared on the episode 2 and spoke about Noma. She said she seems too calm. She knows that that child is okay. She's missing her, but I think she knows that the child is okay. She also said that she hadn't known Noma before Dulce had disappeared, and that she had only seen her cry once. Dr. Phil said he would also be contributing to the reward, bringing the total to $75,000. Petitions to have cameras installed at the park had also garnered collectively nearly 2,000 signatures. This morning I signed an executive order directing nearly all of our 9 million residents to quite simply stay at home. In March 2020, COVID-19 put a halt on normal investigative practices. There were no more face-to-face briefings, courts were shut, and traveling out of state was significantly harder. Several psychics came forward with one saying they had communicated with Dulce and that she was buried in a shallow grave near her school. Former FBI Special Agent J.J. Claver said that whilst he couldn't speak for the police department, the FBI would not place any credibility on information that had been provided to them by a psychic. Alongside the thousands of tips that had come in, 3 cryptic letters had been found in Ohio, one at a library, one at an ice cream shop, and one at a racetrack and casino. An index card had been sent to the racetrack and casino, and a letter had been mailed to the library. Police in Austintown had carried out searches, but these had turned up nothing. The handwriting appeared to have come from the same person. The letter sent to the library was 2 pages long, and made reference to Dulce and her mother's appearance on Dr. Phil. However, the information in the letter could all have been found with a simple Google search. The letter had a Cleveland postmark, but it could have been sent from the Austintown area. The index card that was sent to the ice cream shop in Weatherfield Township, a few miles away from Austintown, was found in the mailbox of the shop. It was postmarked from February 21st. The index card sent to the racetrack and casino gave details that were specific to Austintown, which is close to the Pennsylvania border. It also did not have a postmark. Much of the writing was illegible, but according to a police report, part of it read, "Look for Dulce Alaves. Age 5, kidnapped from Bridgeton, New Jersey. Look website for story/photos. Dr. Phil, 76 Truck Stop, Dead End Street. Entrance Woods. Please look." The return address was illegible, but the zip code was traced to Mexico, but the police didn't know if this was really where it had come from. Investigators searched an area of roughly 40 acres near to the race course with cadaver dogs and infrared technology, after the letters said she could be in that area, but nothing was found. It was announced that the letters were going to be sent to the police in New Jersey, so that more investigations could be carried out to determine who had written them. Police Chief Gamari said, "We are investigating to see if we can determine what the source is, because if it doesn't come back as related, we want to know that." But he also emphasized that if these were part of a hoax, he wanted to see whoever had sent them prosecuted for distributing false information. The former family spokesperson, Jackie Rodriguez, said she had received a letter in March. It was random scribbles on bits of paper with words like 1776, campground in Mexico on them. One thing immediately stood out. No address had been assigned to the envelope. It had been sent in. Gamari said he still believed the community was withholding information from investigators. "I can say that we still firmly believe that there are people in the public that have information that they are not sharing with us," he said. On the 1-year anniversary of Dulce's disappearance, Noma gave an interview about her daughter's case. She said Cumberland County Prosecutor Jennifer Webb McCrae said that with the absence of evidence suggesting that Dulce had died, they were going to hold on to the hope that she was still alive. It was around this time that local law enforcement reached out again to Dulce's father Edgar after a video was posted to YouTube on Dulce's birthday. First, it is a question without an answer a year and a half later. Whereas Dulce Alaves, the father of the missing South Jersey child, has released new video of her this Sunday. Today is her 7th birthday. Hello everyone, my name is Edgar Perez. In his own words, the father of Dulce Maria Alaves with a message on his daughter's 7th birthday. I'm really sad and hurt. I don't know if my baby girl is okay. Perez, who was deported in late 2018 and unable to see his daughter in the months leading up to her disappearance, professing to those who questioned his relationship with Dulce Maria that he took care of her from when she was a little baby, and denying claims he has her or knows where she is. For those that think that I took my baby girl, let me tell you that I got my baby today. Just like everyone, I wouldn't know where she is. 2 years after her disappearance, the community held a silent walk. We're not going to give up. We're going to keep on. I'm going to keep on going out there and searching, family and friends gathering, and holding on to hope that little Dulce will soon be found. Police released this age-progressed photo of Dulce. This rendering is what she may look like at 7 years old. They're hoping this picture may generate leads. The community will be walking to the police station and lighting candles. We like to light her way home. Hopefully it will spark somebody's memory, and somebody will come forward and say, yeah, we did see something that I think is of value. It had now been 3 years since Dulce had disappeared. An age-progressed image of her by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children was issued to the public. A vigil had also been planned at the park she had vanished from. The police chief says new tips are coming in about this case. They even received an anonymous tip just a few days ago. Bridgerton Police Chief Michael Gamery says about a dozen agencies are working on this case, but says there could still be people out there with information. Their information, no matter how small it may be, it could be that piece of the puzzle that will help us determine what happened to her. Let's not let it stop here. Once we go home, let's keep on sharing about her. Let's keep on talking about her. And don't let her name die. Dulce's mother and grandmother shedding tears throughout the vigil. No one can imagine the suffering. She's my whole world. We miss her a lot, and we want her to be home. Organizers say they will be back here every year on the anniversary of Dulce's disappearance until she is found. Reporting from Bridgeton, New Jersey, I'm Jennifer Joyce, Fox 29 News. On what would have been her 8th birthday, people gathered to remember her. The search for Dulce Maria Alaves continues. Detectives continue to carry out interviews and investigations in the United States and Mexico and follow all lines of inquiry. The family home still contains her favorite toys and dresses as they wait for her to come home. Her backpack remains where she left it, untouched, with her school papers from her last day at kindergarten inside. Her mother said, I have all of Dulce's dresses in safekeeping. We have not gotten rid of any of her clothes. We haven't given it away. Her dresses, her shoes, all of it. Her toys too. We don't let anyone touch her things. They're there for her. They also remain in the same home, hopeful that she will one day walk back through the door. If you have any information relating to the disappearance or whereabouts of Dulce Maria Alaves, you can contact the Bridgerton Police Department or the FBI. There is also a phone number for Spanish speakers to call with any information. You can also contact the New Jersey State Police Missing Persons Unit. Story 3. This case takes us to the scenic city of Bend, which sits on the Deschutes River in Oregon, home to 23-year-old Kaylee and Sawyer, who lived with her boyfriend of a couple of years, Cameron. Kaylee worked as a dental assistant, and she was also busy studying at Central Oregon Community College. She was creative, enjoying photography, drawing, and writing poetry. She was also very sporty, loving snowboarding, golfing, fishing, and wakeboarding. With so many other outdoor activities and beautiful sights to see and photograph in Bend, it really was the perfect place for Kaylee to live. Her parents had divorced and remarried when she was young, but she had a great relationship with both of them and her step-parents, and she was also close to her 4 brothers. Friends and family said she was one of the happiest people they knew. She was giving, popular, always smiling and entertaining everyone, and she was often out and about socializing. Her mother said everybody was a friend to Kaylee, even if they were a stranger. On the evening of July 23, 2016, Kaylee had plans to celebrate a friend's bachelorette party. She got ready and left home to go and meet everyone in downtown Bend, very close to her college campus. After she parked her car at her friend's house, they all headed out for the evening. Over the next couple of hours, Kaylee and her friends moved around various bars. Everybody was in good spirits. The drinks were flowing. Everyone was dancing, singing, playing games, and enjoying the celebrations. At one point, Kaylee started dancing with a man at the bar, and one of Cameron's friends, who happened to be there too, saw her and texted Cameron to tell him. Just after midnight, on what was now July 24th, the night out was coming to an end. Everybody had had a lot to drink, and Kaylee called Cameron asking for a ride home. As he was on the way to get her, Kaylee texted Cameron's friend to apologize about dancing with the other man, and how the situation might have looked. A short while later, Cameron arrived and picked Kaylee up. An argument started right away, which carried on the entire ride home. They parked up outside of their apartment complex, and Cameron said he stormed out of the car as the argument got more heated. Kaylee stayed inside, crying, and saying she needed some space to calm down. 10 minutes later, Cameron went back outside to try and coax her in. It was too late to be arguing, and if they just went to sleep, everything would be fine the next day. But as he approached the vehicle, he realized the passenger door was wide open, and she was no longer inside. In fact, Kaylee Sawyer was nowhere to be seen. Cameron started searching and sent Kaylee several texts. "Where are you? Kaylee, please just come home to be with me. I don't want to play this game. I'll start searching, but please help me out." Kaylee replied, saying my phone's about to die. Cameron said, "Please don't do this to me. I apologize for being upset. When I picked you up, I just drove up and down College Way really slow. I didn't see you, and I don't know where else to go. Just come back." Kaylee said, "Are you kidding? Because that's bullshit. Goodbye." She then turned her phone off and stopped responding. Cameron went to a friend's house, hoping she had walked there, but she hadn't. He drove up and down the streets looking for her, but to no avail. Kaylee's mother, Julie, and her friends were also trying to get hold of her, but Kaylee wasn't responding to any of them either. Everybody was still holding out hope that she had turned up at someone else's house to call off, but it was seeming less and less likely the more time that passed. And soon the police were called. "Hi, I'm not sure if this is quite the right number to call. Last night I got home from the bars with my girlfriend. She got upset at me and ran off, and I chased her and wasn't able to find her, and I still haven't heard from her. Her phone's off. I called all her family, and they haven't heard from her, so I'm wondering what you recommend I do. We can put in a call, and we can have officers and deputies." "Okay, where was she last seen at?" "College Way." "In that apartment complex?" "Yes." "In a specific apartment or?" "In the parking lot." "It was like 1 o'clock in the morning." "Yeah, she was mad at me. So I walked inside and told her to come meet me in there when she's like calmed down. And then I went back out in 10 minutes, and she was gone. And I called her a few times, and she said she was walking down the street. And then I guess she said her phone was about to die. And then I couldn't get a hold of her after that. I haven't heard from her since. She's off on foot." "Yes." "What's her last name?" "Sawyer." "First name?" "Kaylee. Kyle. She's got her phone with her. She did last I saw her, but it's been dead all day, and I imagine she would charge it. Do you know what carrier it is?" "It is Verizon. She has a vehicle. It's parked at her friend's house. And I've been over there and talked to her friend, and she hasn't heard from her either." "And the vehicle's still there?" "Yep." "Any idea where she would go or?" "I don't know. I figured she'd go where her car was to her best friend's or her mom's. I've been over to both, talked to her dad, and I just haven't heard anything from anybody known to us." "All right. We'll have contact with you. They'll give us a call back." "Okay. Will do." "All right. Thank you. Bye." "Thanks. Bye." "Yes. I need to have an officer call me. My daughter is missing, and she is over 23. But she has epilepsy and some medical issues." "All right. And what is your name?" "My name is Julie." "Julie, okay. I'm going to have the officer who spoke with her boyfriend earlier give you a call. Okay? That would be awesome. Thank you so much." "You're welcome. Bye-bye. Bye-bye." Kaylee's name began circulating on social media, and the word was spreading that she was missing, culminating in hundreds of volunteers coming out to look for her. Cameron was interviewed right away, but detectives had no reason to be concerned about him or anything he said, and he was very quickly ruled out. The friends she had been out with were also questioned, but they couldn't help either. Their attention then turned to the man she was seen dancing with at the bar, and they hoped this might give them a lead. But he was just as shocked that she was missing. He had danced with her for all of a few minutes before she had rejoined her group, and then left, and he hadn't seen her again after that. An unusual missing person case has hundreds of Central Oregonians concerned and on the lookout. Bend police are working to find Kaylee Sawyer, and tonight Jennifer Wade spoke with Sawyer's parents. Jen, how long has their daughter been missing? Alex Sawyer was last seen early Sunday morning near her West Bend apartment parking lot walking toward nearby Central Oregon Community College. Her mother says her daughter is very close to her family, and it's very unusual for them not to hear from her for 2 days. They say they are worried sick, and just want to get their Kaylee back. She has 4 younger brothers who desperately want their big sister home. Missing 23-year-old Kaylee Sawyer has much of Central Oregon on the lookout. Thousands of concerned residents spent the day putting up flyers and sharing their concern on Facebook. And we just contacted everybody and said, please get her face out there. Everybody was definitely concerned, but Kaylee's mother Julie was far more than that. She said the second she heard her daughter was missing and not replying to anyone, she felt a shift in her whole body, and something was telling her that Kaylee was no longer alive. Officers started trying to find the location of her phone. Her phone was pinging all over the city of Bend. But sadly, this was confirmed to be an old iPhone that was still registered under Kaylee's Apple ID. It was now Monday morning, and Kaylee hadn't shown up to her shift at the dental clinic. Police knew they had to pick up the pace, and Kaylee entered law enforcement databases as an endangered missing person. As they approached the 24-hour mark, a new police officer called Isabel would report something to her colleagues that would blow the case wide open. She told them that her husband had been acting very strangely in the last couple of days, and had said some incredibly concerning things to her. Her husband was 31-year-old Edwin Lara, and Isabel said his odd behavior had been apparent since he came home very late on Sunday after his shift had finished. He often worked long and late hours as a college campus security guard. When he works the graveyard like he did on Saturday night, he starts at like 3 p.m. What time does he work like a 12-hour shift? It's always changing. It's always changing. It's always unpredictable, so I actually was on the point. So what time is church on Sunday? 9 in the morning. Okay. Are you noticing anything weird at all at this point? So he was very quiet, like on the way to church. He wasn't saying much. At church he was just very quiet, very withdrawn. Like he would usually grab my hand or something. He wasn't doing anything. So when we got out of church, I asked him, what's wrong with you? What's going on? I don't know. We've been together for a very long time. I know some things out. What do you think? Because you get so quiet. Yeah. Do you want something to drink? Do you want something? The couple had been having problems for a long time, so Isabel didn't push him for answers and just assumed he was being off with her. A few hours later, on what was now Sunday morning, Edwin and Isabel attended church together, where Edwin was in the church band. And after this, they went to go and watch a film. But Edwin's weird behavior carried on into the next morning. Comes out of the room. I'm like, what happened? Tell me. So he sits on the sofa. I turn off the TV. And then he just says that. He's like, I kill a woman. That's what he said. You hit her with the car. That's an accident. Why? What do you mean you panic? What do you mean? And what did he say? He just kept saying I panic. And at that point, he's already he got up, and he's already going into the room and walking back and forth. And I'm not really quite understanding what he's telling me. And then I'm like, so what did you do with the body? What? And he's like, I hit her, and I'm like, and then I kept asking him, what has it got to do with you hitting her? And now you panic, and you hit the body. So it didn't make sense to you. It wasn't making sense to me. Edwin also told Isabel that some of Kaylee's things were hidden in the shed. And after this, he fled the house armed with Isabel's gun. It wasn't making any sense to me. But when I saw the stuff, I'm like, oh my God. Did he say when this happened? So he just said, he's just telling the story. He just hit the thing. When he was working that Sunday morning, he didn't give me a good time. Officers went straight to the home where they found exactly what Isabel said they would. Kaylee's purse and ID, her shoes, a blood-stained rock, and a clump of what looked like it could be Kaylee's hair. What they found pointed to far more than accidentally hitting her with his car and panicking. Everything was pointing towards this being a violent homicide. By this point, however, Edwin was already on the run on what would become an interstate crime spree. After leaving his car at his parents' house, he spotted a 19-year-old called Andrea sitting in her car in a parking lot. She had just clocked off of a 12-hour shift and was about to head home when Edwin opened the passenger side door, pointed a gun at her, and demanded she start driving. As she drove, he showed her pictures of him in his campus security uniform and spoke to her about the news reports, talking about Kaylee. After 3 hours on the road, Edwin wanted to stop at a motel for the night. As he checked in, he made Andrea pretend to be his girlfriend. Once inside the room, he handcuffed her to the bathroom door while he showered. He then ordered her to take a shower in front of him. Andrea was fighting against him every step of the way and point-blank refused. After this, he handcuffed her to the bed and told her to take sleeping pills. In this very moment, the alarm on her phone went off, and thinking on her feet, Andrea lied, telling Edwin she had an STD, and the alarm was to remind her to take her medication. She hoped that this would stop him from sexually assaulting her, and fortunately her plan worked. Edwin, who was becoming more paranoid by the minute, then decided to leave the motel at 1:30 in the morning. The pair carried on driving until 5 a.m. Before stopping at another motel. He walked over to a 73-year-old man near his vehicle and tried to take it before shooting him in the stomach. He didn't get the car, and fortunately the man survived. Edwin then fled with Andrea on foot to a nearby gas station, where he carjacked a 76-year-old woman. The woman and her 2 young grandsons were inside the car. He forced one of the teens to drive the car at gunpoint, before letting them go and carrying on with the vehicle. And thankfully, the family were unharmed. Edwin ordered Andrea to start driving to California, where he had family. During the drive, Edwin used Andrea's phone to record a video of himself. And sorry about that girl in Central Oregon, and everyone I met, family members. Andrea, she's fine and she will be fine since, so far she's been doing, what I've been telling her to do. I used to kill that other girl, and I regret it. I regret killing her. She kept screaming, and I thought it was broken. He made her post it to Facebook, titling it, Murder on the Loose. Edwin called his family to tell them what was going on, and at 6:40 a.m., he called 911, telling them who he was and what he was wanted for. 911, emergency reporting. Yes, hi, this is Edwin Lara, and I'm the guy on Interstate 5 going at high speed. I know you guys have the chopper on me already. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I am going to turn myself in, so, I am wanted for murder in the state of Oregon. Okay, Edwin, where are you at right now? I have no idea. Are you by yourself, or? No, I have someone with me. I kidnapped her in Oregon. She's innocent. Her name is Andrea. I'll let her give her last name, so you can call her family, okay? Okay, just give me a second. Hello? Yeah, hi, what's your name? Andrea. Andrea, what's your last name? Name M.A.S. Okay, are you hurt at all, Andrea? No, okay. Do you know where you are? Let me talk to Edwin again. But I want to ask you a favor. So I have asthma. You have asthma, okay? Yeah. So you tell them not to be too rough on me because, I can't breathe right now. Okay. The officer sees you, and are you able to safely stop? Yeah, I can stop, but not right now. I usually want to stop right here in the middle of the road. Putting myself in danger and putting everybody else in danger. More in danger, I guess. They won't. They're aware. I'll let them know they won't. But if you can stop safely, they just don't want you to run. They don't think you're going to run or anything. Okay. Edwin, do you have any weapons with you? Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I do have a gun on me. I am not going to flash the gun. So you tell them not to shoot me. Okay. I don't want to die. Okay. You stick by your words. I'll let them know. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, I'm going to let them know. Don't hurt Andrea. She's a nice girl. Don't hurt her. I'm actually calling my family just to say bye to them. So once I'm done calling all my family, then I'll turn myself in. A California Highway Patrol officer saw the car speeding on the interstate and tried to pull it over. The chase reached more than 100 miles per hour before Edwin was eventually pulled over. Before he was arrested, he recorded himself saying, I know this is being recorded, and I just want to say to the family of Kaylee that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for what I did, and in time I will tell them where the body is. He then handed the phone over to Andrea, and police placed him in handcuffs. 19-year-old Andrea was also arrested, but when they realized that she too was another innocent victim, she was released. So Edwin, at this point in time, I do want to let you know that the room is being video recorded. It's also being audio recorded. When Edwin was taken into custody, he told the officers the same story he had told Isabel, that he had accidentally hit her with his car, but said that he had then strangled her when she wouldn't stop screaming. Something which everybody agreed made no sense at all. Isabel, I'm finding out stuff about you with your family, and those kinds of things. I know you've got a heart that's probably pretty heavy, and you wanted to tell us some stuff about the vehicle accident. And that's why we're here, okay? We have not been able to find Kaylee's body. Can you please help me find her body immediately before we start talking about anything else? Oh, the reason why I'm asking you, that is I've done this a bunch of times. I want to tell you where the body is. Yeah, I do. And you know this man, I'm done. What's he doing, man? Can I say the story of what happened first? Yeah, as you're drawing keys or whatever you'd like to do, you're doing good. Edwin, you know what? This is not easy. You might be a little bit scared. We're going to hear what you have to say. We really, really want to. I'm thankful to you. I want to say that right away that you're here with this man has to say, and that you've got a heart inside of you. And I know because I was in your house, I saw the Bible. I know you've thumbed through it a lot. I see that you've tied for months consecutively. I know you have God in your heart, okay? And that's just not a trick. That's eternal, right? You know that. And I was going to turn south on College Way on the D4 lot. So I was going to turn south on the do not enter area there. And I didn't see her. She was wearing all black. So I was in a hurry. So it was my fault. And I wasn't expecting anybody, at that time of night. So I turned, and I didn't hit her that hard. I just bumped her with the patrol car, bumped her with the front rack, and she fell down. And at first I thought, first thing I killed her, but I didn't hit her that hard. So I got out of the car, and she was really drunk. And then she looks at me, and then she started screaming. So I panic, and I have a little problem. She was kind of heavy, So I just grabbed her and pretty much ripped everything off her, like her clothes. I threw her in the ditch. And then I went back home, and I was like, okay, they gotta find her pretty quick. So I got to get a motor, and put her somewhere else. After this, the detective told him that it was for the best that he come clean, as he would only have to answer to God and repent his sins. Everyone who knew Edwin said he was devout in his religion, and that it was one of the most important things to him. So the detective decided to use this knowledge to hopefully get a confession. Edwin finally started to tell the truth. So a couple of things you need to understand, and we're finally getting to the real problem here. We really are, is you knew she was never getting out the car the moment you shut that door. Whoa, let me finish. You need to let me finish, right? Immediately you go to give me your purse and your phone. Why do you think she wasn't going to get out? She wasn't going to survive that encounter, was she? This is where it does not make sense. If your intent isn't already there to do some kind of harm or some kind of evil to her, some frigging evil that's there, bro, it's there. You just gotta face it down. You can't cower away from it. You face that damn thing down right now. If you know the only way, if you don't have intent in her head, your thought is, I've got to keep that phone away from her because she's going to call for help before anything bad's even happened. You've already made a decision. Am I right or am I wrong? Tell me. So I made the decision that I have to silence her to kill her. Let's be real. When you say silence her, you mean kill her. Is that correct? Correct. When did you make that decision? When she started screaming because she had seen my face. But you've already grabbed her phone. You already kept her away from making a call for help or contacting someone. So you're already preserving yourself. So I'm thinking it's before when you ask for the purse. I think you already know in your head. I'm going to silence her. I'm going to kill her. She honestly thought that I was going to do something to her. You were man. And that's the problem right now. You were. You absolutely were. At first. At first I wasn't. Yes, you were. Kaylee had left Cameron's car and walked out into the night. When Edwin saw her, he started following her in his patrol car. The conversation between the pair, if there indeed was any conversation at all, remains unknown. But somehow, Kaylee ended up in the back of the car, and Edwin started driving. Police and Kaylee's family believed that Edwin had offered her a lift, and she had accepted under the assumption that she would be safe with a security guard in the patrol car. Students leaving clubs or bars often received rides home from the campus security, so this would likely not have been unusual or alarming. But as soon as Kaylee got in, she was trapped. The doors wouldn't open from the inside, and she would have been completely helpless. It wasn't long before Edwin started demanding that she have sex with him, and when she refused, he strangled her until she was unconscious. She was then driven several miles out, where he strangled her again and smashed a rock against her head. He then raped her. Kaylee was still alive, and Edwin grabbed another rock and hit her in the head and left her body there. It is unknown whether she was still alive at this point, which is a truly horrendous thing to contemplate. After this, he drove back to the college campus where he changed cars and drove back later in an attempt to conceal her body. After he told them everything, Officers went to locate the first car that Edwin had been driving when he went on the run, and inside were some handwritten notes, one of which read, "The place I killed her is on the B12 lot. Run her over on College Way," and another which said, "This note is to say that I am sorry for taking her life." It was after this that near a canyon off of Highway 126, the body of Kaylee Sawyer was finally found. A tragic update to bring to you tonight in the disappearance of Bend resident Kaylee Sawyer. Police now say they found a body, and they believe that to be Sawyer's body. Now Edwin Lara has been arrested yesterday in connection with this. Edwin Lara is a 31-year-old Redmond resident currently employed at COCC, working as a part-time campus public safety officer. We've recently learned that Lara's wife, Isabel Ponce Lara, as I mentioned, is a Bend police officer who yesterday morning reported her husband's potential involvement in this. Despite his confession, Edwin Lara pleaded not guilty, and the prosecution announced that they would be seeking the death penalty. Edwin's lawyers argued that his rights had been violated in the interview room, as he wasn't given the option to make any phone calls whilst being held in custody. To everybody's dismay, during a pre-trial hearing, a judge actually threw out his lengthy and detailed confession and said that it could not be used as evidence. The prosecution were then left hoping that the forensic evidence would give them enough, but it was undoubtedly a huge blow to their case. Edwin's attorney called his crime spree an enigma and said it could only be explained by his client's genetic degenerative cognitive brain disability. The prosecution said there was no doubt he was a potential serial killer and psychopath. A year and a half after murdering a young woman in Bend, the killer admits to the murder. This morning, 32-year-old Edwin Lara pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and the death of 23-year-old Kaylee Sawyer. This plea deal means he will avoid a possible death sentence. In January 2018, in order to avoid the death penalty, Edwin changed his plea to guilty of aggravated murder and robbery. Despite the evidence they had in Kaylee's case, the charges of sexual assault did not stick. Although Edwin had pleaded guilty, he did not plead guilty to sexual assault. The county district attorney spoke with Kaylee's family and told them that their main goal as prosecutors was to put Edwin away for life. And pushing for a sexual assault conviction as well might complicate the trial and jeopardize the chances of getting a life sentence for murder. Her family begrudgingly agreed. Kaylee's mom also spoke today, calling Lara a monster. More family and friends will speak later this afternoon. The judge is expected to sentence him later today or tomorrow. And with this, Edwin Lara was given a life sentence without parole for the murder of Kaylee Sawyer. He later received a second life sentence for the kidnap of Andrea. Lara himself addressed the court, making an emotional plea for forgiveness. "Today, I've seen your pain. Today, I've seen your anger. I don't have much to say to you at this moment. I only have a single prayer. It's something I would like to speak to whoever is willing to listen." After Lara's speech before the court, Judge Michael Adler called Lara's actions cold-hearted beyond belief, and added that Lara was fortunate that a jury would not be sentencing him to death. "God Almighty who art in heaven, called a believer to die. I'll ask you to please heal the hearts, all those broken hearts of this community. Today, we don't celebrate the end of this tragedy, because it's not over for Kaylee's family. Today is the 548th day we mourn Kaylee's death, and tomorrow will be day 549. Today, though, we do take solace in knowing that Kaylee's killer was brought to justice." The judge credited Andrea for her extreme courage and bravery, and thanked Kaylee's father and stepmother for one of the most difficult letters he'd ever had to read in his career. He told Kaylee's family he was deeply sorry and said, "I wish I could change things. I can't." Edwin's wife Isabel filed for divorce and resigned from her position as a police officer, feeling she couldn't carry on with it, given what it was her ex-husband had done. In her resignation letter, she said, "This decision has not been easy, but I have decided that it will be in the best interests for my career advancement and further development." Kaylee's family filed a lawsuit against the college for failing to do an adequate background check on Edwin, and for not acting upon behaviors that gave many people cause for concern. One female officer actually refused to ride in the same car as him and reported him because he scared her so much. The lawsuit also included evidence that the campus safety vehicles very closely resembled police patrol cars, and Central Oregon community officers were given uniforms that were also similar to the Bend police. Community officers were armed with pepper spray, ballistic vests, body cameras and handcuffs, and drove vehicles with cages inside. And the lawsuit said this simply should not be allowed, as it allowed people to abuse their position. Kaylee's family finally reached a $2 million settlement with Central Oregon Community College. In 2022, more tragedy came for the Sawyer family when Julie's storage unit was broken into by two people on a drug-fueled crime spree. Over 12 months, John Vieira and Emily Pickett stole from many people, including Julie and her husband, taking $30,000 worth of their belongings, including some of Kaylee's ashes, which Julie had put into a little necklace. John Vieira pleaded guilty to 16 property crimes and was given a 40-month sentence, while Emily was sentenced to 10 days in prison. John admitted to throwing the necklace containing Kaylee's ashes into a bin, and tragically, it has never been recovered. Kaylee's legacy also stays strong through Kaylee's Law, which was passed in 2019. Kaylee's Law requires campus security and their vehicles to be clearly distinguishable from actual law enforcement. The vehicles cannot have rooftop lights or a divider, known as a cage, between the front and back seats. They must have a GPS and an interior video camera that records whenever someone gets inside. Campus officers are also now prohibited from making vehicle stops or stopping and frisking individuals. National background checks and psychological testing would also be required before a security officer is hired. Her family also started KK Readers, KK being Kaylee's nickname. KK Readers honors Kaylee by donating Dr. Seuss books, specifically The Places You'll Go, to children in Head Start preschool classes all over Central Oregon. It was her favorite book as a child and inspired her to write stories and poetry as she got older. The murder of Kaylee devastated so many, and the painful aftermath prompted some much-needed changes in the law. Julie said of her daughter, "The moment I held her, I understood what love at first sight meant, and that it is real. She will continue to live on in all the memories that are shared. She had an amazing 23 years, and I want that to be remembered." Story 4. As the evening winds down in one of the most glamorous and luxurious department stores in London, gunshots suddenly ring out. People run to find cover, worried it's a robbery or a terrorist attack. As police descend on the scene, it soon comes to light that this is the tragic culmination of a disturbing series of events. 22-year-old Claire Bernal was originally from Groombridge in Kent. She had attended St. Gregory's Catholic Comprehensive School in Tunbridge Wells before moving on to West Kent College, where she obtained a BTC National Diploma. Claire was shy, gentle, and very thoughtful, always thinking of other people and never speaking ill of anybody else. She took part in several makeup and beauty courses, specializing in consultancy, and also did theater makeup at Shepperton Studios. Soon her hard work would pay off, as she got a job as a beauty consultant in the department store Harvey Nichols in Knightsbridge, which was Claire's dream job. Harvey Nichols is one of London's most iconic luxury department store chains, with the Knightsbridge one being its flagship store. To prepare for her interview, she had written pages of notes, determined to make the best impression possible, and sure enough, she was successful. From a young age, Claire had loved all things skincare and makeup, and so she was thrilled to land a role like that, and she was incredibly proud to be working for such an iconic store. She was popular with her colleagues, and was described as well-spoken and quiet, with a warm personality. She made the move to Dulwich in southeast London, and lived with two flatmates whom she also worked with. Claire was thriving in London. The busy city life was exciting, and she was making the most of every opportunity. It was while working at Harvey Nichols that she met one of the security guards, 30-year-old Michael Pesh. The pair began chatting, and he soon asked her if she wanted to go on a date with him in January 2005. Michael Pesh was a dual citizen of both the Czech Republic and Slovakia. He had previously been a soldier in Slovakia, but would be prosecuted for desertion. After working as a security guard at the United States Embassy in Bratislava, he moved to the United Kingdom. Shortly after arriving, he began working as a security guard for Harvey Nichols. They went on a few dates over the course of about 3 weeks. Claire's mother, Tricia, would later say he was quite a bit older than Claire, and he was going through a divorce. It wasn't an ideal situation that any mom would want for their young daughter. During the time they dated, I never got the sense she had fallen in love with Michael. She was very flattered by his attention. He showered her with affection, and very quickly told her he loved her. Claire's cousin Christian said, alarm bells went off when he told her that he loved her after a very short time. It was no more than 3 dates they had been on. The red flag just started waving. After their first date, Claire called her mother and told her she felt very uncomfortable. She said he wanted to be with her all the time and didn't like her seeing her friends. She said he didn't like her going home, and that she was feeling suffocated, adding, "It's all happening much too quickly." Things only started to get worse. When Michael returned from a trip to Slovakia, he demanded that Claire be there to meet him when he got into the airport, as he didn't want to have to take his suitcase across London. He then said he wanted to stay at Claire's flat, a prospect that made her extremely uneasy, as they had only been on a handful of dates. When she asked him to leave her flat, he refused, and was adamant that he stayed. After a lengthy back and forth, she was able to persuade him to walk to the train station, but he then refused to board any train. Claire had had enough. She told him it was over, but he would not take no for an answer. Pesci called her 20 times, and when she didn't answer, he sat outside her flat for 2 hours. He became verbally abusive and shouted at her flatmate, and he was adamant that he needed to talk to Claire, but her flatmate refused, and he finally gave up and left. The following day, he followed her home with a huge bouquet of flowers. She reiterated what she had said the day before. It was over, and she wasn't interested. She left the flowers on her doorstep, and they stayed there all week. This was just the beginning of a terrifying campaign of harassment. His incessant phone calls and texts carried on, with him messaging her up to 50 times a day. One text read, "We are meant to be together." She would change her phone number, but he would soon find out what her new one was, and the messages started all over again. His delusion that they were still in some sort of relationship was evident from his messages, with one reading, "It's our anniversary tomorrow. How should we spend it?" He would watch her while she was working, and would use the mirrors and reflections in the store in order to look at her. He would apply pressure on people who worked at Harvey Nichols and ask them to get Claire to talk to him. On one occasion she did decide to speak to him and asked him to stop harassing her, but this, like everything else she had previously said to him, had no impact. He would not take no for an answer. One day, as Claire was leaving work, he followed her in his security uniform. He grabbed her and shouted at her, yelling that he loved her and he knew that she loved him too. Claire tried her best to reason with him and said that she didn't love him. His response was to scream at her, "Yes you do, you stupid little girl." His text messages would also become increasingly sinister, with one message reading, "If I can't have you, then no one will." This would go on for months, and the people in Claire's life were becoming increasingly aware of what he was doing. A colleague would say, it was well known he was stalking her. His stalking was also having a major impact on her professional life. She was getting into trouble at work because she would run late, or struggled to concentrate and focus. In March 2005, Claire was heading home. She noticed Pesh waiting at the underground station. In a desperate attempt to get away, she ran and jumped onto the train, but he was able to get onto the same carriage and sat opposite her. As the train came into the next stop, she got off and tried to run away, but he chased her and forcefully pushed her. She was then able to get onto another train, but Pesh was right behind her. She said, "If you don't leave me alone, I will have to report you." He replied, "If you report me, I will kill you." She said that all she wanted was for him to leave her alone, and if he did this, she wouldn't take it to the police. He smiled at her, stroked her face, and attempted to kiss her. Claire pushed him away, and he got off at the next train stop. When the train didn't immediately leave, he started banging on the train window and waving at Claire. Shaken and afraid, she called her mother in tears and told her what had happened. This was incredibly difficult for her family, to see someone they loved being put through something like this. Claire's cousin would later say, "Just by looking at him, I didn't get a good feeling. He is batshit crazy, and he is dangerous, and he is unstable, and he's obsessed." Refusing to put up with it anymore, she told her bosses at work about what had been happening to her. The head of security for Harvey Nichols was a former police officer, and when he was informed, he took what Claire was saying seriously. He used the security cameras to track what Pesh was doing, and he soon saw him stalking and harassing her. He also spoke to different members of staff and compiled a file of complaints and accounts about what he had been doing. Pesh was moved onto a different floor and put on a different rotor to her, but this still made no difference, and he would come to Claire's department constantly. He was then suspended. The head of security encouraged her to report him to the police. As Pesh had threatened to kill her if she went to the authorities, she initially didn't want to report him. Her mother said she had also been hesitant as she felt embarrassed about what was happening to her. The tipping point came when it emerged that he had asked another member of staff, who was working part-time at the store whilst training to be a lawyer, if someone committed a murder, what would the sentence be? Claire then contacted the police. He was asked to come into work, where he was met by police and arrested. He He was also immediately sacked from his job as a security guard. As he was let out, Claire saw him and told her mother that he looked angry. In spite of all that she had suffered, Claire felt bad, with her mother saying she didn't want him to get into trouble, she just wanted him to stop. He was taken to the station and interviewed, and his version of events was totally different to Claire's. He said that he had been the one to end the relationship, and that she had said that she loved him. He said he had then regretted breaking up with her, so went back, but he couldn't understand why she didn't want to be with him anymore. He said that he was sorry if he had upset her, but denied making threats to kill her. He admitted to everything else, saying he had only wanted to see if she wished to continue the relationship. The police took statements from Claire, but didn't take statements from her colleagues or flatmates who had witnessed the stalking. She also wasn't given a formal risk assessment. Other than what she had said, the officers had no evidence of him making threats to kill. Michael Pesci would later be released on bail, under a non-molestation order, meaning he was not allowed to contact Claire at all, or go to the store. His recent brush with the law had not deterred him, as just 2 days later, he was back on her doorstep, waving at her through the window. She called the police, but he had fled by the time they arrived. No action was taken. Claire and her flatmates decided to move away in the hope they could escape him, but within just a few days, on the 10th of April, he had turned up at their new place, after finding out where they were now living. She called the police again. They arrived, but like last time, Pesci was gone. Claire got into the police car and drove around, trying to spot him, and eventually they did. He cooperated, even holding out his wrists for the officers to put handcuffs on him. He didn't seem bothered and was just smiling at Claire. He was put under arrest for breaching the conditions of his bail. He was charged under Section 2 of the Protection from Harassment Act of 1997. Claire's mother Tricia said the police relayed the message to Claire that he really didn't mean the threat, that he said there was a language barrier and he was upset and would never have hurt her. He was sent to Balmarsh Prison, where he spent the next 8 days. He was then bailed to make his appearance in court, which was scheduled for the 31st of August, on the condition he did not go to Knightsbridge or contact her in any way. As he awaited trial, Claire and her mother went on holiday to Florence to celebrate her birthday. They spent 5 days there, and Claire was making the most of every moment. Her mother said the trip was pure gold. After all she had been through, Claire was finally able to relax and enjoy herself. During this time, Michael Pesci went back to Slovakia. Whilst there, he went to a firing range and underwent weapons training. On the 14th of June, he passed the firearms exam, and a month later, he obtained a firearms license. He also purchased and registered a handgun. On the 20th of July, he headed back to the United Kingdom. He traveled via coach and ferry, and was able to smuggle the handgun into the country in his luggage. As the trial loomed, Claire waited to be called to give evidence. But then on the 31st of August, at Tower Bridge Magistrates Court, Michael Pesci suddenly changed his plea to guilty. There would be no trial, and Claire would not have to face him. He was then released on bail. Claire was relieved that what had been happening to her, and what she had suffered, was finally out, saying she now just wanted to get on with her life. September 13th, 2005. Since the trial, Claire had not seen Michael Pesci, and her life seemed to be getting back to normal. As Claire's day started, headed into work, the hours ticked by as she served customers on the shop floor, and before long, she was just 10 minutes away from her shift ending at 8 p.m. A few customers were walking around, and the store was generally quiet, as it was so close to closing time. One of Claire's colleagues put her hand up to Claire and looked at her watch, showing there was only a few minutes to go. Claire smiled back at her. One of Claire's colleagues then noticed a shadow appear behind her, and believed it may have been a boyfriend, who had come to meet her as she finished. The figure then raised his arm, brandishing a gun. He fired a shot at the back of Claire's head, and she fell to the floor. He then fired 3 times at her face. As people ran to find cover, he fired another shot into the ceiling. He then turned the gun on himself, and took his own life. Michael Pesci had just carried out his terrifying threat. 2 people were shot dead at the exclusive Harvey Nichols department store in London tonight. Police said a man and a woman were pronounced dead at the store. Detectives aren't looking for anyone else in connection with the shooting. Claire's mother Tricia had been out celebrating a friend's birthday that night. After returning home around midnight, she heard a loud banging on her front door. After opening it, she was met by 2 police officers. One of them told her they were there about her daughter. The family liaison officer then gave her the devastating news. Her daughter had been shot dead at work. Trisha knew instantly who was responsible, and said, "It was Pesci, wasn't it?" The officer nodded, confirming that it was. In a statement, her mother said, her colleagues were left devastated by her murder, and they were offered counseling to help them process their trauma. As the investigations into what had happened were carried out, Pesci's flatmate found a 40-page notebook. One entry shortly before he murdered Claire detailed how he was contemplating the meaning of life, with references being made to ghosts and prophets. Also in the diary was Claire's address. He had written poetry too, and one of the poems read as follows. It was revealed that he had gained entry to Harvey Nichols by sneaking through a back door, despite having been told to stay away. He had also taken cocaine. When it emerged that Pesci had been arrested and bailed, domestic violence campaigners wanted answers as to why this was allowed to happen. The head of the charity refuge said, "Yet again, women who are stalked and threatened by their partners have been let down by the criminal justice system. How many more murders do we have to have before women get the protection they need and deserve?" A few weeks later, Claire's funeral was held in Tunbridge Wells, with hundreds turning out to pay their respects and remember her. An inquest into Claire's death was held. The Westminster coroner, Dr. Paul Knapman, said that after hearing about the alleged errors by police, courts, and prosecutors, he would consider widening the inquest. The inquest heard that a risk assessment had not been done by the officers who had first interviewed Claire, and that she had not been told that he had been charged and remanded in custody. It was also revealed that a form had not been filled out, which helps police establish a level of threat that someone might pose. But it was also discussed that even if the form had been filled out, as Michael Pesci had no previous convictions, he likely still would have been determined to be low risk. In 2007, the coroner ruled that the murder of Claire Bernal could not have been reasonably foreseen. But he did criticize the police for wasting time with filling out forms to provide a scapegoat. Claire's mother Trisha was determined her daughter's death was not going to be in vain, and she channeled her efforts into changing the law and making stalking a criminal offense in itself. She worked with other families who had also been affected by stalking, teaming up with Carol Farrakay and Stella Moore. Carol's daughter had been stabbed to death after being stalked, and Stella's daughter had been shot, also after being stalked. The three supported a pioneering new project, the first of its kind in Europe, called the Family Justice Center. All domestic violence or stalking victims who use the service are immediately classed as high risk before a fuller assessment can be made. The Family Justice Center works with various agencies and charities, including police and investigators, to help put victims in touch with the right people, to ensure that they have the correct support. Trisha, Stella, and Carol were also there in January of 2008, when the Family Justice Center was visited by the Home Affairs Select Committee. Together, they also helped set up protection against stalking, which amongst the many aspects of its work, runs a helpline to support people impacted by stalking. Trisha said, "Every county should have a stalking service. We need to protect victims, but we also need to address the offender. This is crucial. Unless you have a two-pronged approach, it won't work. They go into prison, and when they come out, it is likely they will either pursue the victim or move on to another. Simply locking them up is not going to work. It wouldn't have worked for my daughter's killer. It's 6 years since Claire Bernal was shot dead. Her killer had been charged with harassment, but released on bail a fortnight before he murdered her. Peers debating a law change tomorrow believe it's just possible their amendments could have prevented that tragedy and others." Earlier I spoke to Trisha Bernal, whose daughter, as we heard there, was killed by a stalker in Harvey Nichols 6 years ago. I started by asking her in what way her daughter had been let down by the criminal justice system. Claire was 21 when she was being stalked. She had no idea what danger she was in. All she knew was her world was caving in. He had made a threat to kill. That never at any point was that taken seriously. He was allowed to leave the country. He was away for 4.5 months. He was given the same bail conditions, and he literally planned my daughter's death. Claire was at high risk. The signs were there. Having understood now the danger of stalking, Claire didn't understand those dangers. None of the family did, none of her friends. The professionals didn't even understand it. I can literally, as weeks go by, I can see that more and more people are taking it seriously. There's more victims that are reporting it. They're not embarrassed, they're not ashamed. The message is out there now. Finally, their hard work paid off, and in 2012, new legislation was passed that made stalking a criminal offense. In 2021, Trisha was awarded an MBE for her campaigning work, and she remains an incredible victims advocate. Trisha said, Claire Bernal was a young woman cut down in the prime of her life. The impact of her death has been momentous and has led to much-needed changes in the law. It is through this tireless victim's advocacy that Claire's memory will continue to live on. Story 5. California is a state that needs little introduction. With a population of almost 40 million people, many travel from far and wide to visit the Golden State. Home to glitz and glamour, golden beaches and gorgeous scenery, Silicon Valley, and the Hollywood elite. But like most places, California is definitely not without a darker side. Today we are looking at a series of appalling crimes spanning across 15 years, and only reaching a conclusion in 2021. This is the story of the Hollywood Ripper. This story covers almost 2 decades, and actually begins in 1993. But sometimes you first must go forwards in order to work backwards. We'll begin today's episode in 2001 in Los Angeles, California. One person that called this place home was 22-year-old Ashley Ellerin, an up-and-coming fashion student finding her way in the hustle and bustle of LA. She was feisty and fearless, and everybody said she was career-focused and determined to be a success. After gaining a place at the Los Angeles Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, she started taking extra classes at UCLA and got a part-time job as a dancer out in Vegas. Ashley was working long hours every single day, carving out her own path in the busy city. She was sharing a bungalow with some friends on a nice little street in an idyllic location, just a short walk away from the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Given her job and the social circle she was running in because of her fashion work, Ashley soon started catching the eye of big Hollywood stars. She briefly dated Vin Diesel, and was also romantically linked to Law and Order's Jeremy Sisto, who even flew Ashley over to one of his film sets. In December 2000, she started talking to an actor whose star was rapidly rising in Hollywood, 23-year-old Ashton Kutcher. Currently starring in the hit TV program That 70s Show, and having just wrapped on the movie Dude, Where's My Car, he and Ashley had met through mutual friends and hit it off right away. February 21st, 2001 was the night of the Grammys, and Ashton was going to an after-party at a friend's house. The Westminster coroner, Dr. Paul Knapman, said that after hearing about the alleged errors by police, courts, and prosecutors, he would consider widening the inquest. The inquest heard that a risk assessment had not been done by the officers who had first interviewed Claire, and that she had not been told that he had been charged and remanded in custody. It was also revealed that a form had not been filled out, which helps police establish a level of threat that someone might pose. But it was also discussed that even if the form had been filled out, as Michael Pesci had no previous convictions, he likely still would have been determined to be low risk. In 2007, the coroner ruled that the murder of Claire Bernal could not have been reasonably foreseen. But he did criticize the police for wasting time with filling out forms to provide a scapegoat. Claire's mother Tricia was determined her daughter's death was not going to be in vain, and she channeled her efforts into changing the law and making stalking a criminal offense in itself. She worked with other families who had also been affected by stalking, teaming up with Carol Farrakay and Stella Moore. Carol's daughter had been stabbed to death after being stalked, and Stella's daughter had been shot, also after being stalked. The three supported a pioneering new project, the first of its kind in Europe, called the Family Justice Center. All domestic violence or stalking victims who use the service are immediately classed as high risk, before a fuller assessment can be made. The Family Justice Center works with various agencies and charities, including police and investigators, to help put victims in touch with the right people, to ensure that they have the correct support. Tricia, Stella, and Carol were also there in January of 2008, when the Family Justice Center was visited by the Home Affairs Select Committee. Together they also helped set up protection against stalking, which amongst the many aspects of its work, runs a helpline to support people impacted by stalking. Tricia said, "Every county should have a stalking service. We need to protect victims, but we also need to address the offender. This is crucial. Unless you have a two-pronged approach, it won't work. They go into prison, and when they come out, it is likely they will either pursue the victim or move on to another. Simply locking them up is not going to work. It wouldn't have worked for my daughter's killer. It's 6 years since Claire Bernal was shot dead. Her killer had been charged with harassment, but released on bail a fortnight before he murdered her. Peers debating a law change tomorrow believe it's just possible their amendments could have prevented that tragedy and others." Earlier I spoke to Tricia Bernal, whose daughter, as we heard there, was killed by a stalker in Harvey Nichols 6 years ago. I started by asking her in what way her daughter had been let down by the criminal justice system. Claire was 21 when she was being stalked. She had no idea what danger she was in. All she knew was her world was caving in. He had made a threat to kill. That never at any point was that taken seriously. He was allowed to leave the country. He was away for 4.5 months. He was given the same bail conditions, and he literally planned my daughter's death. Claire was at high risk. The signs were there. Having understood now the danger of stalking, Claire didn't understand those dangers. None of the family did, none of her friends. The professionals didn't even understand it. I can literally, as weeks go by, I can see that more and more people are taking it seriously. There's more victims that are reporting it. They're not embarrassed, they're not ashamed. The message is out there now. Finally, their hard work paid off, and in 2012, new legislation was passed that made stalking a criminal offense. In 2021, Trisha was awarded an MBE for her campaigning work, and she remains an incredible victims advocate. Trisha said, Claire Bernal was a young woman cut down in the prime of her life. The impact of her death has been momentous, and has led to much-needed changes in the law. It is through this tireless victims advocacy that Claire's memory will continue to live on. Story 5. California is a state that needs little introduction. With a population of almost 40 million people, many travel from far and wide to visit the Golden State. Home to glitz and glamour, golden beaches and gorgeous scenery, Silicon Valley, and the Hollywood elite. But like most places, California is definitely not without a darker side. Today we are looking at a series of appalling crimes spanning across 15 years, and only reaching a conclusion in 2021. This is the story of the Hollywood Ripper. This story covers almost 2 decades, and actually begins in 1993. But sometimes you first must go forwards in order to work backwards. We'll begin today's episode in 2001 in Los Angeles, California. One person that called this place home was 22-year-old Ashley Ellerin, an up-and-coming fashion student finding her way in the hustle and bustle of LA. She was feisty and fearless, and everybody said she was career-focused and determined to be a success. After gaining a place at the Los Angeles Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising, she started taking extra classes at UCLA and got a part-time job as a dancer out in Vegas. Ashley was working long hours every single day, carving out her own path in the busy city. She was sharing a bungalow with some friends on a nice little street in an idyllic location, just a short walk away from the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Given her job and the social circle she was running in because of her fashion work, Ashley soon started catching the eye of big Hollywood stars. She briefly dated Vin Diesel, and was also romantically linked to Law and Order's Jeremy Sisto, who even flew Ashley over to one of his film sets. In December 2000, she started talking to an actor whose star was rapidly rising in Hollywood, 23-year-old Ashton Kutcher. Currently starring in the hit TV program That 70s Show, and having just wrapped on the movie Dude, Where's My Car, he and Ashley had met through mutual friends and hit it off right away. February 21st, 2001 was the night of the Grammys, and Ashton was going to an after-party at a friend's house. Ashley and Ashton spoke on the phone, and the pair made plans to hang out after the party. Ashton said he would meet her at her bungalow, and they could go for dinner and drinks. Ashley spent her day catching up with her dad, who was visiting from out of town. After this, Ashley's landlord, Mark, came over to see her. It would later come out that the pair had been seeing each other on and off for a while, and slept together that evening. At around 8:30 p.m., Ashton called Ashley to confirm their plans. He told her he was running behind, and maybe they should just grab some drinks and pass on dinner. She said that was fine as she was just out of the shower anyway, and would slowly start getting ready. At around 10:15 p.m., Ashton called Ashley again, but her phone rang out. He headed over to her bungalow anyway. The lights were on, and her car was parked outside. After knocking on the door several times and getting no answer, he peered through a gap in a side window. It looked messy inside, but Ashley had told him she was in the middle of remodeling, so the mess didn't seem too out of place. He could see some red on the floor, and assumed it was a glass of wine that she had spilled. As he was later than he initially told her he would be, he thought that she was simply mad at him, and had either gone out or gone to bed. With this he left. The next morning, Ashley's roommate walked into a frightening scene. Ashley was on the floor outside her bedroom in a pool of blood. She had been stabbed 47 times, with some of the wounds being almost 6 inches deep, and her head was almost severed. Her body was already turning blue, and it was clear that she had been dead for hours. The body of 22-year-old Ashley Lauren Ellering was found by her roommate early Thursday morning. The relatively quiet community was completely stunned. Ashley's death was shocking, and on everybody's minds. Her family and friends gave police all the contacts and information they could, but for somebody who was as busy and popular as Ashley, detectives had a lot of names to get through. The only neighbor that could offer them anything said they thought they heard something that sounded like shouting just after 8:30 p.m., but they put it down to a party or a gathering. They hadn't seen anyone coming or going, and apart from the noise, there was nothing else that seemed noteworthy. The police started with the man she was supposed to be seeing that night, Ashton Kutcher. He told them that he was worried, as although he had nothing to do with her death, his fingerprints were on her door handle. They asked him some routine questions, and he was very quickly ruled out. He was shaken and upset about what he now realized he'd seen inside, but he simply couldn't help the police any further. Another person they wanted to talk to was Ashley's landlord, given their relationship, but he was also eliminated from the investigation. The bungalow was very secure and double-gated, and as there was no sign of a forced entry, it meant that she had opened the door to her killer, which implied she potentially knew them. One of the names her friends handed over to the officers was Mike, the furnace man. They didn't know a lot about it, just that he was someone Ashley had complained about pestering her for a while, with some of her friends saying he was creepy, always hanging around, and turning up uninvited. After several months, the Los Angeles Police Department finally landed on a name: Michael Gargiulo. As detectives started trying to locate Michael to ask him some questions about his whereabouts that night and his connection to Ashley, they received a surprising call from the Cook County Sheriff's Office in Illinois. They had recently opened up a cold case from 1993 and were looking for someone currently living in Los Angeles that might be able to help them, none other than Michael Gargiulo. The LAPD could not believe what they were hearing and knew this was no coincidence. The Illinois case that was currently being investigated was the 1993 murder of Tricia Picacho, an 18-year-old who had been stabbed nearly 50 times on the steps of her family home. On the night of Friday, August 13th, Tricia met up with some friends for dinner at a TGI's. It was one of their last nights together before they all went their separate ways to various universities. That night, she and her friends stayed together until about 1 a.m., and after dropping her friends home, Tricia drove home herself. Just a few hours later, Tricia's father, Rick, found his daughter dead on the front steps of their home as he left to walk the dog. He said the first thing he saw when he stepped outside were her little tennis shoes before he fell onto his knees, screaming. She was covered in wounds and blood, and one of her arms had been broken. She was still clutching her house key in her hand. She was found violently stabbed and slain near the doorway of her family home just days before she was supposed to have begun her college career. She had fought her killer hard, and there was DNA under her fingernails. But these samples would lie dormant for many years, given the fact that forensic technology was in its infancy. Tricia's parents said that she was a dream child, a straight-A student, a debate team champion, and one of the hardest working and kindest people they knew. She was set to study engineering at Purdue University, and was most definitely up for any challenges life threw her way. Nobody could believe that anyone would want to hurt her in such a brutal way, and they simply had no names and no suspects. Before long, Tricia Picacho's case went cold. Her mother, Diane, said that the police had told her unfortunately, some cases just didn't get solved, and that's the way it was. She said, but sadly for the family, it seemed it had just been them fighting for answers for the last 7 years, until it was reopened, now that forensic testing had come such a long way. The Cook County Sheriff's Office wanted samples from everybody that had been in contact with Tricia around that time. After she was found on that fateful morning, Michael Gargiulo had actually been one of the first people on the police's radar. He had admitted to driving Tricia to a friend's house 2 days before she was killed. He was also good friends with her brother Doug and a frequent face at the Picacho home. He was questioned by police in 1993, but no charges were filed. And now, almost a decade later, officers wanted to talk to him again. As soon as the murders of Ashley and Tricia were compared, the similarities in the way both women had been killed could not be overlooked. Los Angeles police now needed to find Michael even quicker, and after a few months of looking, they finally located him. The first thing they wanted was a DNA sample, but he refused, saying he had nothing to do with either case, and without a warrant, he wasn't going to hand anything over. With this, the officers had no choice but to leave. They kept tabs on Michael for a while. And when they found out he had briefly been admitted to hospital, they secretly got their DNA sample from there. After a long wait, the results finally came back. Michael Gargiulo's DNA was a positive match to the DNA found under Trisha's fingernails all those years ago. Investigators were so relieved, they went straight to the attorney's office, looking to seek an indictment for murder. The attorney's office, however, refused to take it any further. They said that the DNA could have been exchanged through casual contact, given the fact that Michael knew Trisha and her brother from school. But according to witnesses, Trisha spent the night with many people, including her boyfriend, but the only DNA found on her was Michael's. A second blow came when the LAPD determined that they had no physical evidence tying Michael to the murder of Ashley Ellerin, and they announced that no charges would be filed there either. Detectives had been on the cusp of catching a dangerous killer, and it had slipped through their hands in an instant. But they knew that this had to be their man. They just had to go back through his history and gather as much as they could about his character, prior relationships, and previous crimes. So, who was Michael Gargiulo? And what had led to all of this? Born in 1976, Michael Thomas Gargiulo grew up in a quiet suburb of Glenview, Illinois. He was from a big family, having 7 brothers and sisters. He would tell people he suffered physical abuse at the hands of his father and other siblings, although these claims were never corroborated. As he entered his teenage years, Michael gained a reputation as a bully with a quick and aggressive temper. He was also known to lie compulsively and exaggerate things all the time. One of his friends recalled he could go from being perfectly pleasant to almost inhuman in a split second. Michael soon started getting arrested for things like breaking into unlocked cars in his school and fighting with people. He developed a fascination with the serial killer, Ted Bundy, and spent countless hours deep in books about forensic science, something he soon took great pride in knowing a lot about. He told people if he ever got caught committing a crime, he would either know how to get himself out of it, or he would lie until he dies. After Trisha was killed in 1993, the Piccaccio family started receiving gifts from Michael. A t-shirt for Rick, a restaurant voucher, and some flowers for Diane. Michael then showed up at their house, asking to talk to Rick. They said it looked like he wanted to get something off his chest. He waited for him to come home for almost an hour, before abruptly leaving without saying anything. Rick and Diane were so on edge after this strange encounter, they got straight on the phone and told the detectives what had happened. The police did log it, but it was never followed up on. In 1997, officers saw another chance to try and get Michael to talk about Trisha. He was charged with stealing a car, and police said if he told them what he knew about Trisha's murder, they could cut him a deal on the charges. But he still sat quiet and said nothing at all. Former girlfriends of Michael had horror stories to tell of their time with him. One said when she was 17, he handcuffed and raped her. Another one of Michael's exes said he punched her in the face so hard, she ended up with a detached retina. He threatened to kill her, saying he would be able to get away with it because of his extensive knowledge of forensics. In 1998, Michael decided he was going to go to LA to chase a dream that many share when they move there. He wanted to be an actor and a model. Michael quickly got a job as a bouncer at the Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset Boulevard, West Hollywood. No sooner had he been hired, he was let go for punching a customer in the face. During his brief time there, Michael made friends with 2 other bouncers. They said that Michael had once asked them if they'd ever killed anyone. He then admitted to murdering Trisha Piccaccio back in 1993. "I buried a bitch. I left the bitch on the steps for dead," he calmly said. With Michael's reputation as a liar, the 2 men assumed that this was just another one of his wild stories. In the fall of 2000, Michael met Ashley Ellerin, who at the time was living just across the street from him in Hollywood. He offered to help her change a flat tire, and the pair exchanged numbers. This short encounter soon became a fatal obsession. Before long, he was trying to visit her at all hours of the day and night, sitting outside her home in his car and turning up wherever she was. Despite all of this and the DNA matches, for years would pass since that fateful day back in February 2001 when Ashley was found dead, and over a decade since Trisha was killed. It was now 2005, and police were still working on both cases. Although they still only had one suspect, they didn't have enough to meet the threshold of what was required to file charges. To their horror and dismay, another shocking and disturbing crime was about to take place across the city. A 32-year-old mother of 4, Maria Bruno, was starting fresh in a new apartment complex in East LA. She had recently separated from her husband, and she moved into a new place, looking forward to a new start. She told everyone she had spent a lot of time choosing the apartment and had picked it because of its security and how safe it felt for her and her young family. She had 2-year-old twins, a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old. Just 10 days after moving in, on December 1st, 2005, Maria was found dead by her ex-husband Irving. Her ex-husband found her mutilated body and called 911. She had been stabbed 17 times, her throat had been slit, and both her breasts had been cut off. The only clue left at the scene was a blue surgical shoe cover with a small amount of Maria's blood on it. Whoever her killer was, they had broken in via the kitchen window at around 1 a.m. and used one of her own knives to kill her. Experts determined the killer was left-handed. Police's first thought was that Irving might have something to do with it. They had separated on bad terms after their relationship had become more volatile. But Irving said the pair were working on getting their marriage back on track, and had even been out for dinner the night before. There were a couple of drops of Maria's blood found inside his car, but he said this was easily explained. While at the restaurant table, Maria cut her finger, and a few employees came to help her as well, corroborating what Irving had said. After police ruled him out, they were left with nothing. One detective said it was almost like she was killed for the sake of it, and they had nothing to go on, apart from hoping there was some more DNA found on the shoe cover. But a few neighbors had their eyes on another man, who was living just across the courtyard from Maria at the time. He always acted and behaved oddly, but in the days and hours leading up to her death, he was acting even more strangely than usual. They gave police a description, and a sketch was drawn up. The man they were describing was Michael Gargiulo. Michael was long gone by the time the investigation got underway, and another awful crime would remain unsolved for several years. It was around this time that Trisha's parents back in Illinois finally learned that there had been a hit on the DNA sample from their daughter's case. They were appalled that it had taken them so long to learn about this, and that Michael was still out there, free, facing no charges. Another 3 years would pass, taking us to 2008. In an apartment complex in Santa Monica lived 26-year-old Michelle Murphy. Late one April night, Michelle woke up to a man in her bedroom wearing a hoodie and a hat. He launched at her and started stabbing her. Michelle was petite, standing at just 5 feet 1 inch, and before she knew it, she was fighting for her life against someone that was completely overpowering her. She grabbed the blade with both hands, trying to get him to lose control of it. She was screaming so loudly, she knew it was a matter of time before someone heard her. In a last-ditch attempt to get him off her, and with all of her remaining strength, she tucked her knees in towards her chest and pushed both legs out at him, causing him to fall off the bed. After this, her attacker ran out of the room saying, "I'm sorry." Michelle was left battered and bleeding on the bed, but she had survived. She called her boyfriend, and he called for help. "I'm sorry, Michelle. The fire department is already on their way to her. The fire department is already on their way to her. You don't know how much it's going to cost, how much it will. We will try our best to provide as much assistance as we can." Her attacker was left-handed and, fortunately, had been cut with a blade in the fight, leaving his blood in her apartment. Sure enough, when the Santa Monica Police Department ran the blood through the database, they got a match, and it went right back to the DNA that was found under Trisha Picacho's nails. And they also realized it matched DNA that was found along the elastic part of the blue surgical shoe cover outside Maria Bruno's apartment. Michael Gargiulo's despicable acts weren't stopping or slowing down, far from it. And finally, with this, after 15 years, his horrific crime spree would come to an end. In June 2008, he was placed under arrest for the attempted murder of Michelle Murphy and held on a $1.1 million bail. A search of his car uncovered many items of evidentiary value, including some blue surgical shoe covers. 3 months later, Michael was also charged with the murders of both Ashley Ellerin and Maria Bruno. However, it would take until 2011 for Michael to be charged with the murder of Trisha Picacho too. Because Trisha's case had happened in Illinois, and Ashley, Maria, and Michelle were all in California, it meant that Michael would have to have 2 separate trials in both states. Michael Gargiulo pleaded not guilty to all charges, and after many pushbacks due to him hiring and firing lawyers, and some attempted escapes from prison, in May 2019, his California trial finally got underway. By this point, it had taken Michael longer to go to trial than any other inmates in the history of the LA County Jail. His defense team said he had suffered mental health issues and was unable to recall attacking Michelle, and it was up to a jury to decide if he was sane at the time or not. This would obviously result in a very different possible sentence, so this decision was not made lightly. Well, tonight, a verdict for the sanity phase of the Hollywood Ripper trial. A jury decided Michael Gargiulo was sane when he murdered 2 women, and then tried to kill a third. That same jury must now decide whether to recommend that Gargiulo will get a death sentence or life without parole. A jury found Michael Gargiulo sane, and this paved the way for prosecutors to seek the death penalty if he was found guilty. Comments he made after his arrest led investigators to believe he could be responsible for as many as 10 murders. He's been charged with 2 murders and 1 attempted murder here in LA. Tomorrow, opening statements are expected to start. The methodical and systematic slaughter of women by Michael Gargiulo. That's what this case is about. What you will hear is that Michael Gargiulo, for almost 15 years, was watching, and his hobby was plotting the perfect opportunity to attack women with a knife in and around their homes. From the outset, you will hear that Gargiulo was a neighborhood kid who grew up in suburban Chicago, and he was a husband and a father. What no one knew for many years, however, was that Michael Gargiulo was leading a double life. When the case is put on by the prosecution, I can assure you at the conclusion of that presentation of evidence, you will not find one single bit of physical evidence attributed to Ms. Ellerman's death. 36,000 pages of evidence have been gathered, and hundreds of witnesses were called to testify, 2 of which were Michelle Murphy and Ashton Kutcher. He arrived for court this morning in a blue suit, seeming very nervous. Now, he only spoke for about 20 minutes, but his testimony was an important one. He served as a witness for the prosecution. This was the first time he spoke out regarding this case. The prosecution painted a damning picture of Michael Gargiulo. They laid out his patterns of behavior, his past relationships, the fact he was left-handed, the DNA evidence, and where he lived in relation to all the women. The jury then left the courtroom to go and see the apartment buildings and get a clearer idea of just how close Michael was to them, and how easy it would have been for him to see into their homes and keep tabs on them. White vans carried the jury in the Hollywood Ripper case to the scenes of 2 crimes. We were instructed not to show the jurors. The first location was the home of Michelle Murphy. Jurors were also taken to a second location, this Hollywood home where 22-year-old Ashley Ellerin lived. Prosecutors say Gargiulo lived in a building close to Ellerin's home. He met her once as he changed attire, then allegedly stalked and murdered her. Michael's defense team, however, raised the fact that no evidence had actually been found in Ashley's home. There was no DNA, no witnesses. It was purely circumstantial evidence, which they argued through and to question the entire trial. Ashley Ellerin's landlord, Mark, then became the defense's focus, and they argued it was entirely possible that after they had slept together that evening, he had killed her. They said this was further corroborated by the fact that when Ashton called her, she told him she was just getting out of the shower, and Mark had already admitted to being there at that time. They said given how she was found, how soon after she got out of the shower she was killed, and the fact that just after 8:30 a neighbor heard something, it put Mark right there at the time, and he was most definitely not in the clear. Lastly, and I think significantly, the apartment, or I should say the building manager, a man by the name of Mark Durbin. I think he's going to be an important witness for you to focus on. They also said that the DNA found near Maria Bruno's home was probably because Michael was a repairman at the time. He could have worn a pair of these during a job on the complex and innocently become caught up in the investigation. His lawyer pointed towards her estranged ex-husband and their toxic marriage. The prosecution, however, said that this was nothing more than a desperate attempt to point the finger at innocent people that had already been cleared by police many years ago. Given Michael's obsession with Ashley Ellerin, he was likely watching her bungalow all evening. When he saw Mark leave, he spotted his opportunity and ran over, taking him just seconds. Ashley could have opened the door straight away, thinking it was Mark coming back to get something, and as it was just a matter of minutes later, she would still be in a robe from the shower. They said the same could be applied to Maria Bruno, and the DNA evidence was clear as it was in the case of Michelle Murphy. The trial was a grueling one for everybody. Even reporters who were seasoned in these type of cases, and knew them pretty well often, had to turn their heads away because the evidence was so graphic and gruesome. As everything came to an end, it was now up to the jury. Breaking news this morning in the trial of the so-called Hollywood Ripper. Michael Gargiulo has been found guilty on all counts for the violent murders of 2 women in Los Angeles County and the attempted murder of a 3rd woman. Despite the defense's arguments, Michael Gargiulo was found guilty on all charges and, in late 2019, the jury unanimously reached the conclusion that he should be sentenced to death, believing no other sentence was appropriate. Their recommendation was heard and agreed upon, and in 2021, 45-year-old Michael Gargiulo was sentenced to death for the murders of Ashley Ellerin and Maria Bruno. Before the judge handed down his sentence, the lone survivor of Gargiulo's attacks, Michelle Murphy, and Ashley Ellerin's father, told the court how one man destroyed so many lives. He is unlikely to be put to death anytime soon, however, as the state of California has not executed anyone since 2006 and Governor Gavin Newsom halted executions for as long as he is in office. But courts have been working on the assumption that executions may one day resume. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Larry Paul Feidler said, "In this case, everywhere that Mr. Gargiulo went, death and destruction followed." Ashley's parents, Maria's ex-husband Irving, and Trisha's family, among others, all gave powerful victims' impact statements. He said, "Cynthia, I'm going to tell you something that's the worst thing that you ever heard in your life." And I went, "Well, okay. I never figured something like that." And he said, Ashley was more and more murdered. And I fell to my knees on the floor. And I started crawling around the bedroom on my hands and knees like an animal. "Your wife, Maria, was murdered in 2005. Is that correct?" "That is correct, sir." "When Maria was killed, how many children did you have with her?" "4 children. After you found out that Maria was killed, did you have to make decisions as a parent as to what to tell your children?" How was she killed?" "Just as a parent, I felt no need for my children to know specifics. A monster exists among us. How is it fair that one person's actions can destroy the lives of so many?" "Her room is the same. The bedspread's the same. The bed's the same. The drapes are the same. And my grandkids go in there and play. And that's how I introduced them to Trisha. And that's why my granddaughter knows her very well. She wears her clothes, she puts on her high heels, and she enjoys it very much." All Michael Gargiulo had to say was, "I'm going to death row wrongfully. I've been framed by tunnel vision detectives. What is the difference of me, Your Honor, wanting to testify and having that ultimate fundamental choice, and being denied that because I'm prevented by my attorney telling me he's not going to help me, he doesn't want nothing to do with my testimony, and that you allowed him, Your Honor, to do that? I'm not telling you your job, but it was my assumption as a judge, Your Honor, that it is my ultimate choice. If I want to testify, that's my right. That's very crucial for me to maintain my innocence. And I feel that the court and defense counsel erred and violated my fundamental choice by going further to the point where I had to be asked a second time, when I already knew that I couldn't testify because you, Your Honor, and defense counsel blocked that fundamental choice. Michael will now face extradition to begin trial for Trisha's murder. But this date has not yet been confirmed. Officers from all forces that dealt with this believe that, unfortunately, there will be more victims out there. During one of Michael's police interviews, he gave several partial confessions alluding to killing at least 10 women, but he refuses to give any further details. The police continue to follow up on leads and tips, and hope that a fuller picture will be painted over time, and more closure can be found in doing so. They also admit that there were many failings within the investigations and how things were handled. "I can't put a happy face on this because we dropped the ball. No ifs, ands, or buts about it," said one of the detectives. When asked about the fact that Cook County prosecutors refused to seek an indictment for Trisha's murder sooner, another detective said, "I'm not privy to everything they have, but I gotta say, if I'd had evidence like that, you'd bet that the LA District Attorney's Office would have had a filing, and these other girls wouldn't be dead. Plain and simple, they wouldn't be dead." For the family and friends that Trisha, Ashley, and Maria left behind, the brutal way in which they were killed will forever haunt them. Vibrant, determined young women, all in exciting new places, their lives so cruelly snatched away in such a frightening way. Trisha's father Rick said, "People talk about closure, but there is no closure. That void is always there." And for Michael's former partners who were subjected to such torment, and Michelle who almost died at his hands, their lives are forever changed as well. Michelle said she dreads going to sleep every night and is equally terrified to wake up. The devastation caused to so many people over those 15 years is unimaginable and unfathomable. It is safe to assume that Michael's crimes would have continued had it not been for his capture. The lengths he had already gone to prove he had no limits and knew no bounds. And it is terrifying to think about what could have happened next, and to potentially so many more people.